There's still some people coming in, but in the sake of everybody's time and the number of cases we have on the agenda tonight, I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting. So I'm going to call the Nottingham Planning Board meeting of Wednesday, July 13th, 2022 to order. Before we jump into the actual cases and everything, I'll have everybody go around the room and introduce themselves, please.
Kendra Jones, alternate.
Robert Davies, alternate.
Gary Anderson.
Ian McKinnon.
Edward Veal.
Susan Mooney.
Charlene Anderson.
Blair Haney, SRPC.
And I believe in our alternate order, I think Buzz was the last one seated. So Ms. Jones will be seated and participating and voting tonight for Ms. Sandler. Mr. Davies will be a seated alternate. Will be an alternate, will be participating in discussion, but will not be voting tonight. And at the moment, we don't have any Board of Selectmen ex officio representative, so all votes would be a total count of 6 for the minutes. So a lot of items on the agenda tonight. We'll try to be fair and keep everything moving along for everyone. I don't plan on us going beyond 10 o'clock. If we get to that point, we'll have a discussion then. The way these work is we hear cases first, design reviews after, and then conceptuals come last, and then on to our other business generally. We generally take them in order. And first, if it's a new application, we have to act on the completeness of the application first. And then once that is done, then we can have further discussion about the merits of the application and potentially have a vote about approval with conditions or denial. So the first thing I'm going to do, though, is one piece of housekeeping to make sure that these get amended and on the record is the approval of the minutes. We had 3 sets, May 25th, June 8th, and then a site walk June 29th. Kevin, the only other modification I had was on the June 8th. It had Ms. Jones is not here, but I think you may have come in a couple minutes late, so she was here for that night because she was seated later on. So that would just be the one edit that I had beyond what was already done. Is there any discussion on the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve minutes for 5/25, 6/8, 6/29.
Second.
That's a motion from Mr. Anderson and a second from Ms. Anderson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion carries 5-0-1, one abstention. All right, thank you, everybody. And I'm going to take one case out of order. I think this one was a minor, was case number 22-006-SUB, application from Isabella and Elizabeth Linsky, requesting a 2-lot subdivision. Property is located at 64 Priest Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire, identified as tax map 20, lot 2-1. Priest Road is designated as a scenic road. Again, this is a continuation. Just catch everybody up, we accept the application is complete. It's not a development of regional impact. And we had one minor, one piece that we wanted to make sure was carried through, being a scenic road, that we had a chance for Conservation Commission input on the stone walls and trees. And I'll let we have a letter from the Conservation Commission in our files, and I'll let the applicant introduce yourself and go over that if you'd like, or I could have Ms. Mooney go and do that part.
Sure. I'm Bob Stewart with RCS Designs, representing the Linskys on Priest Road. I haven't had an opportunity to see what the Conservation Commission had sent, but apparently it wasn't much as far as any aversion to it.
I can.
Oh, Kevin has one too.
So.
That's to say that it might have gotten to my office today, but I've been out all afternoon. I came directly here from another job. So.
Yeah, so I'll review it quickly. So basically, it indicated that based on the proposal and the site and where everything is now, and that the site is going to be using the current driveway, there's no additional rock wall being removed or tree removal planned along the road, that the commission was satisfied with the proposal as presented. And appreciate the opportunity to review the application on behalf of the town. So the planning board, we can vote to accept or not accept the comments. There's nothing there to requesting us to take action or specific actions. I don't think we need to do that. So that brings us back to the board. I believe we had acted on some waivers previously, and so at this point, I believe we're at the point of, sorry, so for formalities, I'm going to open the public hearing again for this. If anybody would like to speak for, against, or just has general questions about this specific application, please come up. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. And so I think at this point for the board, we're at a point where we can act on, make final action on this application. And Mr. Haney, if I missed anything that you had on a prior
Have
comment,
any
let us know.
odd conditions, right? It was just the waivers? There's no,
It was, so easement language would have to be part of the deed, and recording both deeds for the shared driveway. I think that'd be the only other piece, but that's generally part of our requirements for a shared driveway.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve case number, where am I? 22-006-SUB. It includes, the deed includes the easement language for the shared driveway, and also that we, that the applicant includes standard conditions
Second.
for approval.
Motion by Ms. Mooney, second by Mr. Anderson. Any further discussion? So standard conditions generally include like monuments being set and such. It should be in the staff memo, but seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 6-0.
You want this?
Is that the Mylar?
Yeah.
And everything? Yeah.
leave it with Kevin, I guess.
Yeah,
Excuse
and-
me?
Do you wanna, I assume do you wanna take the Mylar with you to take it to the
I'd like to.
Yeah, I
if I
think we
can.
talked about
Yeah.
that, and that we would sign it tonight for him.
Does Kevin, the applicant usually records them at the registry, or do you have to record?
I've been sending them to the registry because that's the best course of action. If anything does come up, they can deal with it then at the registry, but I can't send it in if he wants.
Yeah,
It's a $51 check.
yeah, I think the only other piece is if we have any conditions, we have to make sure that they're met before we sign, generally, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if all those.
one of the conditions is the original Mylar, professional seals and signatures, that I guess has to come back to us, but
Yeah,
I think it's one of those things we can sign it, but
just the fees paid,
yeah,
that's what's on here.
cause if we can sign the plan, we can record it, but if you say doesn't set monuments within a year, then the project's in violation and null and void. Cause I know you have to record it to be able to get like a plan reference for your deed and easement
Correct.
language.
Correct.
We can't really get our deed language unless we record the plan.
do we have the markers in here for this?
I can go grab it. Yep.
Okay,
I've got a Sharpie if that works.
yeah.
One
We only
thing-
need-
Yeah, you just need your signature.
just need a couple
Got it.
signatures.
That's all we need? Or you want, you gotta pass it around?
Is there a Mylar there? Oh, the Mylar's on top.
We're gonna leave two with you?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Apologize for the
time.
additional meeting, but I appreciate you taking the
Thanks for
time
the
to
Conservation
meet with the
Commission.
Conservation Commission.
Thank you.
Here's your pens.
Excellent.
In case you've got a bunch more to sign.
Sure, thank you. Appreciate that. The next item on the agenda, we'll go back into order. Case number 22-002-SUB. It's another continued case. Application from Concrete Products of Londonderry requesting to create a 4-lot subdivision. The property is located at 100 Smoke Street, Nottingham, New Hampshire, and identified as map 11, lot 3. Everybody here for that case?
So the applicant requested to continuation until September 14th, given that we don't have a meeting, an open public meeting on Friday,
24th.
on the 24th of August, we said we we're gonna have that workshop meeting. So I told him, he would have preferred that, but he's fine with the 14th of September.
Okay.
Do you have a running tab of how many times it's been on the agenda? I wanna say we're up to like, we might be pushing 5.
I'm not certain when it,
So this is one that the Conservation Commission wanted to do a site walk on this. So I wonder if, how do we integrate the site walk and the continuation? Do we
I think we
continue it
can-
and then they do the site walk, or do we notify them?
no, we would want to vote probably before we continue. We probably have a conversation on that right now to, if there's a site walk requested, or desired by the board, to set that date and time, and then, we'll let the applicant know, and, if for some reason it doesn't work for them, then we'd have to reschedule.
Yeah, I'd hate to continue this without, I guess, trying to move it forward in some fashion. So if there's a desire from the Conservation Commission, obviously there was a lot of environmental questions and interests, so.
Yep.
Have they reached out to the commission at all, or should we
No,
get
no,
on an agenda?
It's our responsibility to communicate with you
Yeah.
in order to get permission to do the site walk. And
But they
then-
haven't reached out to get on your agenda at all, or anything like that?
No.
Okay. I'd make a motion to do a sidewalk for sure, if we can discuss dates.
Yep. I mean, Wednesdays tend to be, I think, we've kept things on Wednesday nights for people, keeps it off the weekends for everybody. So the earliest, I don't know how much notice we would need, it would be July 20th, and then on a non-meeting night, and then going like August 3rd, August 17th, somewhere in that area.
I would be available till the 17th, but I don't have to be there.
So maybe do it the August, the 3rd, because today's the 13th, and
Yeah.
that would give Kevin time to notify them and get things posted.
May I check with Mr. Demerit?
Sure, yeah.
Mr. Demerit, does that date work for you? August 3rd for a site walk?
Mr. Merritt being in the audience, and he's the chair of the Conservation Commission.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. You have a time?
Would we do 5 or 5:30 last time?
5:30 last time. Would 5:30 work?
Probably.
5:45?
He's whining a bit.
Another meeting at 7:00 that night, so.
Push it
Would
to.
5 work?
I won't be, I'll be out of town that week, but,
Oh, so it doesn't matter to you?
yeah, it doesn't matter to me.
I can't make it here that early, I'm coming from Rochester, so.
I can make it work.
Okay, 5 o'clock,
August 3rd.
August 3rd, at Smoke Street.
Anybody want, is that a formal motion for a site walk on August 3rd at 5 PM by Ms. Anderson, and is that second by Mooney, Ms. Mooney?
Yes,
Okay.
that's appropriate, yeah.
Site walk, 5 PM, okay. All those in favor of conducting a site walk for case 22-002-SUB on August 3rd at 5 PM, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. If you can't make it that night, please email the land use clerk and myself as the board chair, just so we can get an idea if we're gonna have a quorum or not. And the Conservation Commission is invited to that as well, as is the general public. So now, second item would be the continuance request to August 24th, I believe, was what I heard.
September 14th.
September.
Because we have the 24th.
I apologize, yep.
I'll make a motion.
September 14th.
Yep. I'll make a motion to continue case 22-002 SUV to the September 14th, planning board meeting at 7 PM in this room.
Second.
The only thing I would say to amend with that is any new deliverables with, you know, a week prior.
Deliverables due by the 7th.
Yep. So a motion for Mr. McKinnon, a second by Mr. Anderson, to continue to September 14th, 2022 at 7 PM with deliverables by September 7th. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 6-0. So that is continued. Next item on the agenda is case number 22-007-SIT. It's a continued case. It's an application from David Beatty of BSC Group, representing Concrete Products of Londonderry, requesting approval to build a precast concrete manufacturing facility. The property is located at 160 Old Turnpike Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire, identified as tax map 3, lot 2-2. And as in the past, I'm an abutter to the case, so I will recuse, and Mr. McKinnon will take over as board chair for this case.
And will we seek the other alternate?
Yes.
All right, for this case, I will see Mr. Davies. All right, so for a little background, this case, when it first came to us, there was a vote, motion made and a vote taken to determine that this was a project of, deemed of regional impact. So we worked with staff to make the proper notifications. So we notified some of the surrounding towns and environmental organizations. And alongside, we also received a DRI review from Stratford Regional, since they would also, one of the groups notified, in our benefit. We held a site walk on 6/23, I believe. We had pretty good turnout for that. 6/29. I was close.
Yep.
Had a good turnout, good hour and a half site walk. We got a lot of information. And then we have also received a peer review from CMA engineers. Did you guys receive that review from CMA?
We did.
Okay. So at the last meeting, because it was deemed a project of regional impact, the public hearing was not open for public comment. So we will need to open that this meeting. We did vote on completeness, so we were able to talk about it a little bit. So I guess at this point, I'd look to the applicant, maybe just to provide a brief overview of any updates that are different, if there's anything you've highlighted on the plans differently that you'd like to point out.
Sure.
Primarily since the last meeting.
David Beatty with the BSC Group, with George Sarman here from Shea Concrete. We have revised, per some of your suggestions at the previous meeting, and per other suggestions from the town and other concerned agency representatives. On this particular exhibit plan, some things have changed. We've adjusted the parking. We've added snow storage areas per the request of some. I have addressed most of the concerns that you had from that meeting. Not all, though. A couple in particular, we're looking to sort of adjust a little bit. With respect to the lighting plan, we're not looking to propose a lighting plan for the parking area for the parcel. We're actually looking to just propose some I guess downgrade lights at the corners of the buildings, at the ingress egress, and probably for emergency purposes. We don't want to light up the site at night. Sure. That's not the idea.
I think you stated more so security. That was pretty much it, right?
So we've added this, planning board signature block, survey certification, some of that test pit information that you were looking for some clarity on. The ADA proximity of the parking spaces, the screening buffer, we've gone to a 6-foot wooden fence We fielded the review from CMA, and an alteration of terrain probably is not necessary on this. I think we're in the area of about 77,000 square foot of potential disturbed soil.
And that's just for the new
Right.
proposed project, the limits?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Level spreader information in detail is yet to be added to the plan, but it's in process. We have added a couple of benchmarks. The drainage items, I think, are a little bit more clearly represented in the next plan set. And we'd love to entertain any additional concerns and questions that you might have tonight. I'd like to just say that, this is our third meeting here. We've had two at the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we've been through that successfully, and one with the Conservation Commission, and I hope we've satisfied their concerns. I would love to entertain any additional questions. I'm hoping that we're very near to sort of addressing all the issues and comments that might arise from the board, from the public, et cetera.
Mr. Viadi, did you receive the letter from the Conservation Commission that was sent to the planning board yesterday of our meeting with you on Monday?
I don't believe I did.
Mr. Lemieux probably has one. It's quite an extensive overview or summary of things that you presented to the commission on Monday.
Okay. Favorably?
Yes.
Great.
With comment, though, here and there.
Sure.
Yeah, I was trying to read through it and kind of highlight some of them.
And to follow through on that, one of the women, and a butter, but also a Conservation Commission member, had commented that the proposed skirt around the new building is going to be quite a bit larger than the building itself, and that increases impervious surfaces substantially. So the building itself is 22,250 feet square. The 50-foot wide concrete apron would be a total of 34,000, which is bigger than the building itself. And I got to thinking today and yesterday that I remember UNH did a project years ago about developing permeable surfaces for driveways in situations like this. And I went online today, and EPA endorses the product that allows for parking, if I may give
Yep.
this to you.
Yep.
Allows for parking, but also provides for permeable surfaces.
Porous pavement, permeable pavement.
Yes, yes. And so, as a rule, when it rains, having been a science teacher, 50% of it is runoff and 50% goes into the ground. But if there's no permeable surface, then all of it runs off.
Close. The numbers are close. Depends on the
98.
soils and,
Yeah.
So I appreciate the commentary.
Okay.
We certainly did accommodate the concrete apron in our stormwater analysis. And I need to just repeat, if you don't mind, that our stormwater plan proposes a reduction in all flow rates, suspended solids, water quality volumes, and recharge volumes. The site is actually gonna be a little bit cleaner than from before to after. It's in the report, and we've touched on it before. We have systems in place that actually like double treat some of this and double mitigate some of the stormwater. If I may, we have infiltration trenches that will convey stormwater to deep sump manholes, settling out suspended solids. Overflow from this system is conveyed into oil particle separators, further reducing suspended solids. Overflow from this is conveyed into our storm trap infiltration system, which proposes to infiltrate the remaining residual stormwater into the ground and hopefully into the aquifer.
So it's returning to the system, the underground.
Exactly. Any excess stormwater that's discharged, that's over the over the amount that the storm traps can handle, is discharged through level spreaders, which will mitigate stormwater velocity, hopefully preventing any erosion. So we are actually, this is an over-designed, satisfying the 50-year storm. I think this is a really good system, to be honest with you.
The 50 feet surprises me, because the swim is maybe 30 feet wide, and
Big equipment, you know, a big operation, very heavy.
So the problem is that some of the structures that they make can weigh 60 to 80,000 pounds. And the fork trucks that pick them up, when they come out of the building, if they're on, they can't even go on asphalt. It's not an option. It has to go on concrete. So
this is not a fire issue, this is
this is for the building itself to get around the
I
building,
see.
for the,
The
so
product
the
issue.
concrete
Primarily.
berm has to be a minimum of 8 inches thick with rebar, because otherwise, if we're on pavement, it would just sink into the pavement. It's just, they're too heavy, you know, that's the problem. you know.
I think that we assumed that this was on recommendation from the fire chief, not realizing that it was also part of the construction that you
Yeah,
needed to have.
it's kind of a necessity for them to get around the building with their product.
I think it was a dual purpose.
Yeah.
You can have the,
Well, that
Just like the
clarifies.
existing building there that's now, you see the big door, when they come out, there's a concrete there.
Yeah.
So when the big heavy fork trucks come out, can pick that up, but they don't sink, you know?
So do you need this apron all the way around the perimeter? Or can it be reduced to, say, 2 sides?
Well, if there's no adverse impacts to stormwater, to the resource area, to the aquifer, if there's no adverse impacts, why wouldn't we want to circumvent completely the building? You know what I mean? Why would we reduce it? It's part of it's part of their master plan, it's what they've used in the past, it's obviously something that they require. And I just wonder, I don't think that there's any issue with it.
is your concern to try and reduce that apron to reduce your stormwater runoff? Is that your thought?
Yes, yes.
So I think to that, because they've designed this, it's really a trade. I mean, they added concrete, so the system's larger than maybe it needs to be if the apron was reduced, so it's kind of a one to, ratio there. Yeah, I remember there was
System.
a lot of, need a lot of space for movement
Yes.
of equipment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chipman, should we hear from staff?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we could either touch upon that before we open the public hearing, or we could jump to that right now. Cause I think I just reviewed some of his notes and they kinda overlap. Do you wanna go?
I do have some questions too as well, but
So Blair, I think last time, don't think we went through your comments, cause again, we didn't do it, but would you mind just going over your memo and see if there's anything that you've, I know you have some in red that's new from your latest review, if you could go through that.
Yeah, so, I did talk about the need for a stormwater management plan, which we have seen, relabeling existing conditions plan, parking calculations,
Yeah, we have adjusted the two plans.
not in the side setback, which they pulled it out of the side setback. I did inquire about, ask about the increased truck traffic and passenger vehicle traffic. I didn't, they had stated from the minutes that there was gonna be an increase from what it's currently at.
I'm sorry, Bill.
You guys stated it was gonna be an increase, the applicant stated it was gonna be an increase from where it currently is. And I didn't have anything to add to this because, it's gonna be under DOT's,
I think,
overview.
and I think the other SRPC staff member who reviewed it mentioned it was like a 0.2% or 0.26% increase if you did it relative to the total traffic on the road, so.
yeah.
I think it's almost negligible, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was their general comment. Did you receive the DRI memo?
No.
It was, we can we can touch upon that, but they did touch upon that, and yeah, it was essentially a negligible percentage increase,
Okay.
but. I'll let Blair get through
It
this.
says, jurisdiction of transportation, an updated driveway permit from DOT is typically necessary for proposals that increase the flow of traffic to a site. So, it would appear that something will have to be pursued, from DOT.
Yeah, so that would just be, generally, it's on a commercial site plan, we'll just require any proof of, contact with DOT, and if you need a DOT permit, just make sure the town is copied on it, or if DOT says, nope, you don't need a new permit, just forward that and Kevin can put that in the file.
Okay.
So, I'd be surprised, based on the existing driveway, but you don't have a say.
So, you know, with regards to my comments, that was from the original meeting.
Sure.
And then, I mean, a lot of this was, the red parts were, you know, the first two were just a retelling of what's been updated and how it's been addressed. And then, the last one was asking about the lighting plan, which he's addressed. So, you know, from my perspective, that's where it's at.
Okay, so pretty much it sounds like, and I think some of your comments were kind of captured by CMA, so, you know, if we were to condition, you know, if there was, essentially they need to respond to all CMA comments, it sounds like if they did that, it would kind of overlap with your comments as well.
That's correct, yeah. I mean, there was nothing to comment on, because there was no stormwater management plan, even if there was, I don't really have the
Yeah.
expertise, and so, I sort of left that to them.
Okay,
Blair, were there any comments from the fire chief on this? I thought I saw something, but I'm not,
Yeah, he sent a report,
yeah, I know I looked at it earlier and now I'm not finding it.
and the ZBA's approval was based off of the ZBA's approval was contingent on the fire chief's approval.
there's some comments on the cistern and stuff like that, so.
Right.
I know the chief is in attendance, so if you'd like to get up during public hearing, you could potentially ask for that, but yeah, there was a report.
I just chatted with the chief outside, he gave me the thumbs up.
Okay.
For what that's worth.
With that said, chief, you can let Kevin know. Yeah, so that's still an outstanding comment. I know you guys are working through the cistern design and stuff like that. That's an item that could be handled as a condition if the board chooses. Ultimately, just final approval would have to go through Kevin as, for something like that. So we could entertain that as a board if we choose.
Mr. Chairman, I have some questions.
Yeah, so,
So I was looking at the drawing of the building, and I'm trying to understand kind of how the material flow is gonna go, because it's showing here on the drawing that the office is actually that whole front part of the building. So is materials gonna be moving up over in this area and feeding in, or on the wooded side, or is it gonna be on the existing, like, side?
So when you say materials,
So you're bringing, so we're like, so if the office is here, if the office is here,
yep.
are you, is
There'll be
the
garage- there'll be-
manufacturing process
yeah, there'll be-
kind of going this way, is it going this way, so is the, you know, the mixture being made here, and then it's coming out this way, and then going over that way?
The best way to explain it to us is like if you were baking a cake, you had a bunch of cakes to make, there'll be garage doors on the side of the building, there'll be fixed pots on the inside of the building that don't move. So the material inside the building runs on a crane
So you're
on
gonna
the
have like
inside.
3 bays here, 3
Yeah,
bays
correct, yeah,
here,
probably one on the end.
and one
And
over
then
here.
they'll have passage doors by code, so that people can get out of the building. And then, so when they pour the concrete during the day, they bring them to the door, and then the fork truck comes, picks them up, drives out of each one of those garage doors.
Okay.
So the stuff in the building doesn't really move. So the stuff that's in the building are big, huge forms.
I
So
get
those
that.
forms are like bolted
I
to the
get that,
floor.
I get that.
You know, so that's why they need the doors to go to pick up the product, to bring it out, to bring it outside.
Okay, and then you've got, all of this is pretty much gravel, right, with a
Correct.
couple of grassy swalls, right, is what you've got on the plan?
so that was actually a question I was gonna have, is I was confused. It calls it out as gravel, but it's shown as like a 3-to-1 slope. Is that just, another place is called as loamed? So the plan I was looking at, and I don't know if it's one you
Right,
have,
well,
Charlene, is,
there's two plots here that are.
Sheet C 101.
Yeah, we revised that.
Okay, so yeah, yeah.
It's not gonna be loamed and seeded. It's gonna be, it'll be graded 3-to-1 from the back here, or the side here, down to those, that concrete apron. From there, any stormwater that comes off that hill will make its way onto that concrete apron and into the infiltration trench. The infiltration trench is gonna look like you would see in a gas station. And it's gonna run sort of longitudinally down both of those, concrete aprons on, I should say, the north and the south side. And that will capture that stormwater that comes off this bank here.
So here's your swale, and this is your grassy knolls, kinda, and then that's the concrete, right? Yeah, that's the concrete,
Yes.
and then,
So, yeah.
So it looks like there is a,
there's two on this side.
This
but there's-
is, that's where, yeah, I think we have the same question. We see,
So-
there's
Yeah.
area drains, but, it's marked as gravel areas, but it's a 2-to-1, 3-to-1
so
slope.
that area right there looks like it is, maybe a vegetated swale, which will capture whatever comes off the hill. I guess the other stormwater that is gonna make its way into that infiltration trench will come from probably rooftop.
Correct, everything on the roof will
Yeah,
go into
okay.
drains.
And it will all be captured in the center, anything that hits the actual concrete pad will be
Yeah,
captured in the
it's-
center of that concrete.
Yeah, so if you could look, I mean,
It's not on here.
yes, sheet C 101 is the one I was looking at. It's
Right.
calling out that dark hatched areas as proposed gravel areas. These are the areas outside the concrete apron. Those are the areas that are, some places are called out as grass swales or, what do you call them, area swale, grass swales. Those slopes, I mean, should be vegetated, so, it's a 3-to-1 slope. If it's gravel, it's just you're gonna lose the slope over time, so.
Right.
I think it's just a typo on C 101, instead of saying proposed gravel storage area, and if it's a 3-to-1 show, in other places it's called out as regrade, loam, seed, landscape slope. Just check, there's gravel, but I would hope that if it's gonna be graded out as 3-to-1 slope or 2-to-1 slope, that it would be vegetated.
Sure.
So if you just look at that. Did you have any additional?
Yeah, so, the cistern design that you have on it's dated 2021, and I was wondering if that was like based off of a design that you have at one of the other plants?
No, so the system is being designed just specifically for this building.
For that?
It is,
Okay,
yep, for the sprinkler system as well inside the building.
okay.
And I assume that'll have a new date once the fire chief has signed off on that design as well, so.
So my real big heartache with this one is those abutters. And I don't think a wooden fence, a 6-foot wooden fence, is sufficient enough to, I mean, I just don't. It's,
Okay.
I wonder if you can keep some of the forested land, not make it as right up to the property line as you have it. Especially if you're gonna have 3 bays with forklifts running in and out. I mean, you could see their house. It was pretty clear, and that's not much of a buffer. And a 6-foot fence, I wouldn't wanna live there.
Right.
If you can do something,
So would it be better if we built like a 5 or 6 foot berm there and then put the fence on top of the berm? So we'd be looking at, because most towns have an ordinance of how high the fence can be as well, so we have to deal with that problem as well. So what we've done in the past to get that, so it actually gives you more protection, is we could build like a 5-foot berm there and then put the fence on top of the berm, so now you have like a 10-foot coverage, as well as keeping trees there that we're planning on planting as well.
and I think, putting some
You know?
trees along there as
Yeah,
well.
we're
'cause-
gonna do trees as well, we could also put a berm there as well, we've done that in the past,
Yeah.
you know?
Soil berms are really very effective in blocking noise.
Correct, and
Yeah,
one
the
good
best.
thing about the berm too is if you build a tall fence, if we get a variance to put a 10 or 12-foot fence, the wind blows them over, so they're just not, they don't last. you know?
echoey
So we
too.
found in the past that if we build like a 5-foot berm, you know, vegetate it, and then put the fence on top of that with the trees, it's a nice buffer, you know? So we can do something like that if you'd like.
My other question is related to the cisterns, and I don't, and maybe the chief can answer this, or maybe you can answer this, but who maintains those cisterns? It's on your property, it's your cisterns, and I'm just wondering, you know, usually cisterns are, you know, maintained, monitored, checked, inspected, and so I guess I would wanna see that there's some kind of.
So we can make that part of our environmental thing that comes out every 3 months, could be part of that. So that cistern would have to be inspected, make sure there was, everything was cleaned out, everything was fine. And then generally at our other locations, what happens is that we invite the fire department to come every year for a site view, you know, to walk through all the buildings. We go through all that, and then we could put that as part of that 1-year annual thing as well. Because I know with some of our other properties, the cisterns, the fire trucks get different apparatus and they have different connection points and stuff. The good thing is Shea Concrete makes cisterns, so they're
Right.
pretty much on top of how they are. So, but sometimes we've had it that they bought a new pumper truck and it doesn't fit the cistern, so it has to change. So, but usually we have like a 1-year, you know, thing where the fire department comes out every year, walks through the whole building, makes recommendations, any safety issues that need to be resolved. We can have that, as well as we can make it part of our environmental thing.
Okay, I had a couple other questions I just thought of. So in the plan, what you might wanna just add to is you're not showing where the raw materials are stored over here in the existing site. And I'm wondering, are you gonna have the same thing closer to this building, or are they gonna be?
As of right now, the raw materials are gonna stay where they are, you know?
I think the slope falls off from the, like, not really any flat areas in those, outside of the concrete that would allow for it.
And I think there was a comment too in the CMA plan about that the parking is, at a 10-foot setback instead of a 20-foot setback, so the
I
parking.
think we moved that. I think
Yeah,
that's
we
what
moved the
take care-
parking up
yeah, we
to,
moved the parking.
For the building setback line anyway.
Okay, I see it now, yep. I think that's all I had, thank
Was
you.
it?
Thank you, Charlie.
Yep.
Before we open the public hearing, might as well stick to this train of getting some, other comments, and I'll read in some of the DRI stuff as well. Does anybody else have any comments as they were looking through the plans? No? I had a few quick ones, just, I guess I'll just get them out here while I was thinking of it. You guys did receive both variances, correct?
We did.
Could you guys just list those on the cover sheet? Sometimes it's nice just to carry through what the approved set, just list those variances and the sections that they were granted to, whatever the description was of the approval. We talked about the grass, the call out for the grass slopes, so, and you guys are amenable to looking at like a 5-foot berm with a 6-foot fence
Absolutely.
along it, okay.
Yep, no problem.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And the other, things, just want, the CMA comments, we'll make sure that those, you did say you got those?
We did,
Okay.
yes.
Usually, it doesn't have to be a formal response letter, we like to see if, you know, there's 14 bullet points, to just see some sort of response that we can have on file,
Yeah,
addressing each one.
We just sort of, just kinda got it.
Yeah, yep. And I think you said that you were already making some of the changes that they picked up on. And then I just had a couple house cleaning on the plans. These apply to the C-102 plans, the grading plans.
Yep.
I'd really like to see some sort of a stabilized construction entrance shown on those. It's pretty much gonna be where the existing drive comes in. Cause that will be required to ensure no tracking off the site. And also, I think on the site preparation plan, you guys do show the limits of the erosion control measures. If those could be turned on to these grading plans, just so that we assure that they are capturing the areas being graded,
Yep.
that'd be great. To all of those C1, it looks like you have 1 overall and 2 detailed C-102 102 plans, and then the last thing, I think you
I'm
got.
sorry, Ian.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which 2 plans would you like to see?
The 3 plans, I think it was C-102, and then you got C-102, point one and point two, so 3 plans in total. I think they show the same thing, just
Yep.
different scales. And the last thing, I think I heard you say that you've estimated the disturbance for the new project at about 77,000 square feet. I think there was mention, or maybe that's what you guys had talked about, I saw it in the Concom letter, that, you'd said you were under that 100,000 threshold. If you could, I'm not sure exactly which, maybe on the C-102 notes, just state what that disturbance is.
Yep.
So that it's on the plan and we don't get questions later on about it. Was it related to the plan? So, last call, any comments from the board at this
Yeah,
time?
but just a reminder that, and I think it was in one of the letters that, the old dredge and fill permit that you have, that would need to be renewed. I remember reading it somewhere, it's been 5 years.
Right.
Yeah, and I know that came up at the site walk, and I think my
Yeah.
thoughts on that are too, that the town approval on whatever that work is, I'm not even entirely sure, but I know the area you guys were talking about. The town approval on that would have expired at this point and need to be, renewed, and yes, they're probably, maybe it's expired, so this approval is not showing any of that work.
Right.
So that'll be a separate matter, we'll have to come back
That would
with
just have to be, that would be a separate matter, just covering that single area. Your probably best bet is to make sure you can get your state permit renewed without any issues, and then obviously the Conservation Commission would have something to say, with the wetland permit as well. But that would be that's a separate item. Okay, so, as I said, this was voted on as a development of regional impact. Because of that, we sent it out to notification for the surrounding towns. I think we had the town planner from Barrington show up to the site walk.
Yes.
I don't know if I saw any follow-up, but I think pretty much we take it as if there's no comment, they were pretty satisfied, and they always like to be involved in those items. We did have a representative from the Lamprey River, correct?
Yep.
I don't think I saw anything formal from them, but I know it seemed that the Concom members shared some of the same feelings, which I know were addressed in their letter.
The watershed, yeah.
Yep, and then the last piece that's usually the most involved relating to a DRI application is Stratford Regional Planning Commission does prepare a memorandum covering items such as transportation, access, and parking, conflicts with policies, plans, programs, specifically dealing with noise, hazardous materials, the general ecology of the site and the area, public health and safety, facilities, scenic and visual character, and housing and population growth. So this was a memorandum, is dated the 12th, so I don't know if you received, or if you have, you might not have, did they?
It was emailed to Dave, but it was just, we just received it today,
Okay.
so I sent it this afternoon.
So you can review that in terms of, it just covers general things. This is where it was nice, they actually dove into the traffic, and this is where they said it would yield about maybe an additional 28 trips, which overall, based on the nearest traffic count on Route 4, was a 0.2%.
28 trips,
0.26.
that was 28 trips per?
Yeah, so the way the traffic numbers worked out, it's estimated, a trip out and then a trip back.
No, per day?
Per day, yes. The way let's see here, I can read it actually, just so you know off the top of your head.
I think that's pretty high.
The deliveries are likely to expand from the 2 to 4 trucks per day to by a further 8 to 10 trucks, unless it's, instead of 2 to 4, you're not adding 8 to 10, maybe it's 8 to 10 total, I'm not sure if that was. So they assumed that it was now gonna be a trip of 18 to 14, or 10 to 14 trucks per day, which equated to 28 trips in terms of calculations.
Yep.
That was the 0.26% increase, and they just state, follow up with NHDOT and see if the driveway permit needs to be amended, which, we just need to have something from them stating that, you've done that. You'll read through this.
Yep.
Nothing, I don't know if you guys had a chance to read through it, I read through it, nothing really stood out, they just kind of were throwing general comments out there that apply to a lot of development. I think the longest section was about ecology and resources, but I think the Conservation Commission provided some more detailed local feedback on that, and I think we're okay there. So out of this memo, I don't think, I think it's good that we had this and, or have this on file, and it just states, you know, things we've already talked about, but it was good that they essentially double checked us to make sure we were thinking of everything. I guess I'm gonna open the public hearing, but actually wanted to ask you, the Conservation Commission provided their letter, but was there an understanding that you needed more material before providing a recommendation? I saw the letter and it was kind of, I couldn't tell if the commission was satisfied and felt like they could make the recommendation. I couldn't get that from the letter.
Yes, well, with reservations, in addition to the fact that, the building site will be on supporting landscape for habitat, the whole area is surrounded by high-valued habitat in the region and in the state. So where there was concern with, future development, which is not part of this application.
Sure. Okay.
Additionally, Dr. Smith at the meeting on Monday asked, Mr. Sauerman for a, MSGS sheet on the chemical additive.
Yep, I do have that for you. I did get that today.
Okay, very good.
Yep. As well as pictures. She wanted to know what the containment of that system was, so I have that as well.
Okay.
I'll email that to you.
Thank you.
That was just more informational, but not, you just out of curiosity wanted to see it, to be sure it complied.
Well, whenever you have a chemical involved in manufacturing or even in high school chemistry,
Sure.
you have to keep these MSG sheets.
Okay.
just in case.
So with that, the
That's
fact that the
okay.
applicant has it, do you think that satisfies the
I
commission's
think she
concern?
wants to review
Yeah,
it.
it needs to be looked at.
Okay, so you're saying you need
I
them
think
to
it's
go.
two concerns, what it is, so knowing what it is, and then the containment of it, I think of it.
Yeah. What are the consequences if there's spillage or something like
Okay, so the commission's feeling is that you would like to see them
that?
again?
Yes. Well, no, just as long as we have that information.
Okay, that's what I'm at. I didn't know if you were waiting for them to go back.
No, I think we're satisfied.
Okay. And then before I open the public hearing, Kevin, I did see an email go around, I think it was a while ago now. There was an email or a letter from the abutter.
Yeah.
I think
It was-
I looked for it, I couldn't find,
For the variances, they were against the variances for,
that was,
their concerns were runoff, noise, and view, and that it was gonna impact their property value.
but that was in relation to the variance.
Well, that's where they first sent it.
Okay, so I'll take that as, that would have been handled as under the variance application, just wanna make sure it needed to be read in. With that, I will open, we'll bring this back, after, but I'll open the public hearing if there's any, abutters or public that would like to speak, for this application. We'll start with, those who speak for it, then against, or just general comments. If you do have something to say, if you just come up to the mic, the applicant can always scoot aside. State your name and address.
Did we wanna ask the chief anything?
Yeah, and then I'll open up if the chief, if you feel like you'd like to say something, if you wanna come first, that's fine.
Jay Vilchuk, Fire Chief, Nottingham Fire Rescue. I want to talk about the cistern portion. My comments had to do with the standardization of the fittings and some of the piping design. Nottingham does have a standard specification for cisterns, and I'm sure we could work with you on those minor changes in the piping sizes, support, and connections for the cistern. And just for the record, Nottingham has moved away from cement-type cisterns, but understanding your business base, I don't think that's gonna be an issue, but I just wanted to make sure that, for that one, okay? As far as the testing for cisterns and developments in the town, the fire department of the town are responsible for the testing. We test them at least annually, cisterns and any type dry hydrants. I understand you're gonna assume the responsibility for the testing on?
Yes.
On this, okay. So on an annual basis, at least an annual basis, I would work with you that we can come in and do our own independent flow testing on it, just to do it, okay? Basically, that's in my comments.
Is that separate from their
Correct.
private? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
They're responsible for the maintenance of it, and we want our, the confidence, okay? So we want our independent confidence test.
So just so we're clear, because the ZBA's approval was based off of this approval, so if you're gonna work out those fittings, we probably need to work those out sooner than later, right? Or we do it,
I think there's gonna be some back and forth, that there would just need to be a letter on file, similar to your initial comments, something on file saying, you know, they have addressed,
okay,
and then obviously, saying that the updated plans.
yeah, just so we're all in the same plane.
Okay?
Okay. Thank you,
Further? No, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
that was
Thank you.
appreciated. I'll open up, is there anybody else in the public that would like to, I guess at this point, speak for, against, or general comment?
So, I had got an email, which I'm gonna read it out.
Please.
Again, it's gonna tag on a little bit to what Sue mentioned, and, this is from Kristen, she didn't give her last name. She's the executive director, for the Center for Wildlife in Cape Nettic. And so I'll just read it verbatim. I am sending comments and concerns I shared as a member of the Conservation Commission and the citizen regarding the fire chief's preference of a 50-foot pad, circumference around the building. Please see below. She goes to a email chain from below. I'm sorry I cannot be there in person, but hope a conversation around this excessive impervious surface adjacent to some of the highest ranked habitat and wetlands in our state can occur. This seems especially relevant as we are in the middle of an annual drought, yet experienced another extreme weather event last night. Wetlands do not only support wildlife, but critical groundwater storage between droughts and help to mitigate damage from 100-year storms that now occur regularly. Please let me know if you have any questions.
We'll touch upon that after.
Edward Beal, 17 Garland Road, speaking strictly as an abutter. I said four kind of things I hadn't heard spoken of or necessarily clarified, so I'm just looking to voice those and then get it clarified, please. In general, the applicant has been a good neighbor. You know, we hear the beeping up of vehicles sometimes, but that's because we have the wetlands and then a beaver pond between us, so it noise travels pretty easily. But that's pretty minor, so no real complaint there. I've heard mentioned a couple times that the new plan is going to improve what's there currently, but in a way, in my opinion, that's what's there is what they created. So if it needs to be improved, regardless of what happens with this, it should be improved. One thing I wasn't clear of, and maybe you can clarify if the stormwater plan mentions this, the current gravel area, I don't know if that's being considered as pervious or impervious, and if that's a part of the overall stormwater plan. Compaction, the type of material, and the salt application that they use to keep the dust down, likely make that highly impervious, especially with the weight of the vehicles going over it. So my questions on that are, is that included in the stormwater plan? Is it accounted for? And what's the total impervious area of the lot? Because it's not just the buildings. I would also, two possible requests would be, this may be a good time, if possible, there's one section of expanded storage that was expanded at some point into the residential zone. If possible for it to work out for everybody, I think this would be a good time to bring that back out of that zone, so the facility is strictly in the commercial zone. And then lastly, this one's very minor, especially given the number of vehicle trips that the applicant has discussed. But with the size and weight of the vehicles, when they do have to transport materials, I'd like to voice that, you know, they possibly consider sticking to state roads for transport as opposed to going over like Freeman Hall to get to 152 and because of the curves and the bridge there. So that's that was all I had. So I thank you all, including the applicant, for your time.
Could you just refresh the reference to the storage in the residential zone?
Yeah.
Is that so that would be the south side of the lot closest to the wetland? Is that, I just want to try and get my bearings.
It's, when you look at the current plan, you see like snow storage to the to the bottom left.
Yep, that area, okay.
But beyond that, there was a cut through made at some point, and that area was expanded. You know, it's been there for a while. If you look at old Google Earth images, you can see where that existed. At some point, it came into existence. But again, if we're making things better, you know, that would just be one item, because that would move it away from, there's the wetlands back there. And everything. And again, like I said, that's more of a minor option for me, but figured now's the time when a plan is being drawn up and revised to make that request. Again, thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I'll leave the public hearing open just while we kind of discuss with the applicant. I guess I'd look to maybe see if, I assume you'll work with the fire chief and we'll work that out, and we'll just look for a letter from him that Kevin will get on file.
Yeah, as soon as that new cistern design comes in, I'm sure that we'll be certainly right.
Sure, yep, yeah,
Right in with the chief.
we'll leave that to you guys. We'll just make sure it's in any sort of conditions. To Mr. Veal's point, along with the disturbance, it might be nice to just list out your total areas for estimate. I know obviously the gravel is pretty extensive. It all counts really as impervious in many people's minds, but if maybe when you add amount of disturbance, just list what the existing and proposed gravel, paved and building areas are, just so the areas are out there. I don't think it really doesn't impact any permitting, but it's nice to have that on a plan.
I'm not really sure what he used for the
Okay.
pre-calc. I'm sure he used the entire
Yeah.
site to a point, but I will certainly confer with him and get that information over.
Sure, yeah, and I know CMA reviewed the stormwater part, and I think they said it looked fine. We don't have a requirement that gravel needs to be modeled as impervious. Some towns do, but I'd kind of leave it up to CMA, because they reviewed the stormwater. I think they would have pointed out if they had a concern about the level of gravel, so.
Sure.
I think it would be important just to know, based on the plan we're looking at, what's the existing gravel, paved, building surface, and then what is the total after this proposal? Just have that listed on the plan. And then did you want to discuss at all the area that was brought up that, I'm not really sure what the timing is, or, but I mean, it was brought up, so do we want to discuss? I think the area there in reference to the storage, is essentially there's a little sliver there of.
Right here, Robin, here.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Looks like it's in the wetland setback is the concern, maybe?
well, the edge of gravel is this line right here.
Right, so there's essentially, and then that blue line is your 100-foot wetland
100-foot
setback,
buffer,
yeah.
right. And so, yeah, there are some materials stored down there, but typically, I don't think they're against the rear of the property. I don't think they're on the southern portion. I know that they are on the south, on the west and the east side, as you head towards the back of the property.
Yeah.
So, again, they change so much. Every time we've been out there, they've changed. You know, they're moving things around, and they're delivering things, and they're transporting things, so we'll certainly look into that, for sure.
Yeah, do you think there's any, it's relative to the storage area, it's not very large, and because it is in the wetland setback, I didn't even notice it before, do you think anybody would be amenable to squaring that off?
No, we'll be fine.
So
We can do that, yeah.
square it off at the wetland setback?
Yep.
I think it's a good practice, I mean, if we're trying to protect, we're keeping the new development out of that setback. I think it'd be nice to see maybe that squared off, revegetate it, that'd be great if you guys could accommodate that, I think that would make a lot of people happy.
Yep.
And then I guess in terms of the truck trips, I think we always encourage commercial deliveries, make way on public state roads, just because they're designed for it, but understanding maybe if there's a local delivery, they have to take local roads, but hopefully,
Where is most of the stuff going?
Mostly to the state of New Hampshire right now, you know. So anything that's really big that they make, they have to get state permits for. And if they make really, really big stuff, they have to have the state police, you know, escort them, and they have to go on certain bridges, so they have map routes of where they can go and where they can't go.
yeah.
But that's only probably maybe twice a year or 3 times a year. Most of the real big stuff is made in Amesbury, so a lot of it comes out of Amesbury from that location.
Do you find currently, for instance, Freeman Hall Road was mentioned, which is what, side street nearby, that is utilized at all, or?
Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest with you, what roads they actually use, you know, the majority of the roads that I know is Route 4, you know, going that way, and then they go the other way to Concord. That's the
Freeman
majority.
Hall is the crossroad between, 152 and Route 4. And there's an inordinate amount of traffic that takes that as a shortcut.
It
I
is
wondered if they
a
use it.
bridge crossing.
Yeah,
Probably.
I think we just encourage, just for your planning, or pass on the message, just, I think nobody desires our roads get beat up enough, so.
The major roadways.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Main thoroughfare to a recycling center, so.
Particularly for weight bearing, you know, the town roads are only built to hold that so much weight.
Okay, so I don't think there's any other public comments, so I think, I'll close it for now. We can always reopen it. I think at this point, the Concom has expressed that you guys would like the information, but don't need to have them come back to a meeting. Do you
That's correct.
intend, does the Conservation Commission intend to update their letter and say we've received information and we,
Yeah, that would be good to do.
We could do a follow-up, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
that would be good.
We're not meeting again until, next month, though.
What's the date on that?
Unless we, hold a special meeting.
While you're looking that up, I mean, I guess right now, I think there's a lot of really good improvements made to the plans. I think without the Concom, I guess, closing that out, the CMA comments, which I think have kind of coincidentally been addressed in a lot of the stuff, I'm a little worried that, I'm not sure we could, I guess unless staff feels they could review the plans to ensure they meet the provision.
No, I think we just need the things that we've gone over, just get those updated on the plans, right?
And see a final plan.
And see a final plan.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of loose ends.
And I think the idea there too is, we tend to not approve things with many conditions except coordination with the fire department. We don't put plan modifications generally as a condition, just because Kevin doesn't have time to review it. And then SRPC staff as well is only contracted to a certain degree for review, so generally it's up to the board to determine if, you know, there was 14 items on the CMA list. It's up to us really to confirm that they have been addressed. So with that, I think we'll, yeah, go ahead.
So I understand that there's a few little issues we have to tweak a little bit here. I just wanna give a quick overview summary of this project. This is a very clean, very efficient operation, very little waste, very little water usage, virtually no noise pollution, no light pollution. There will probably not be an access permit required. We don't believe it's 14 to 28 trips. Do not believe it. There's no AOT, alteration of terrain permit, required. There really are no conservation stormwater issues other than objective opinion related, as well as the MSR, the MSGS. This is a very environmentally overly designed project for the town. This is an existing site. We're not proposing anything adverse. It's not a Walmart parking lot with 100 lights. This is a very nice, efficiently run operation, and I appreciate all the input that you've given and all the latitude you've given us. This is our third meeting here. We've been 2 to ZBA, and we've been 1 with the Concom, and we appreciate all those concerns. We will address these minor tweaks to the plan set. But we would love to get a vote tonight, a vote for approval, with conditions.
I don't know if anybody on the board wants to speak to it. I mean,
I'm not comfortable with it.
I'd say that I'm still on the fence, and I'll give you my reasoning why. I think you brought up a point. It's not an AOT project. If it was an AOT project, and we've had AOT projects We still send it out for peer review, but there's that, you know, we do have limited review from the volunteer staff. In this case, I mean, 77,000 square feet of disturbance on top of maybe the existing site covers probably twice that square footage in terms of existing disturbance. We really are relying on the peer review engineer who did give us a review, but there was 14 comments, which I think maybe half have been already addressed. Those would need to just be checked. Essentially, that's our line of defense. It's nice to sometimes have the state permits for review, but in this case, we don't have that protection from an AOT permit. Usually, there's obviously a pretty extensive review there. You know, I think it'd be different if it was, we're down to the fire department cistern. I understand those designs take time to kind of go back and forth, but I think it's the largest commercial development I think the town has seen, even though it's an existing site. It is, if you looked at it as a whole, it's still a very large commercial development for the town of Nottingham, in a great location for it, mind you. But I know I would feel that, you know, it wouldn't be right to approve it with plan modification conditions, final, you know, say from the Conservation Commission, and response letters to ensure that's
These
on.
final few things are the only things that we need. I just don't wanna come back to another meeting and then say, oh, we need another meeting and another meeting. So I'd rather just make sure that everything we have, we can bring to the next meeting.
Yeah, I think it's, we've seen that a lot of
Yep.
a lot of stuff has been addressed. It's always great to have those response letters, which I think you
Yep.
said, you know, you just haven't had the time to do.
Yep,
If we have all that, it closes out the file that Kevin can keep.
yep.
And then we have one final plan that the board feels comfortable that all the information that we've discussed is on there. If the cistern is still out,
I hope to have that. I've been calling the guy every day saying, we need this, you know?
if it's outstanding
I tell you,
though,
the engineers go so slow, you know? So,
I think those are the kind of items, if that's not handled, we can discuss, but
Yeah.
that seems to me to be more of a condition. We've conditioned things like that in the past with
Yep.
residential subdivisions with
Yep.
cisterns. So I think, you know, Kevin, let us know if there's any of the comments the board's given that you need clarity on, and we can kind of go back and forth, and, Kevin can get you guys a copy of essentially our final comments, and you can always go email Kevin if you have any questions for clarification, or Blair, both of them. But I think, you know, because of that, we need one more meeting to close this all out with a vote, and I know, I'm getting the feeling from a couple board members that it would be beneficial to do so based on your comfort with the application right now.
Yeah, that's like 14 items from CMA, you
Yep.
know, that they had questions on, and that's,
Yep, a lot of them are housekeeping, but again,
Yeah,
it's
housekeeping.
still, it's a lot for, the board to process. So with that, in terms of talking of dates, you said you don't meet until next month.
Well,
Will is the Conservation Commission, do you need to meet to discuss it, even if the applicant doesn't need to go, do you need to?
well, I think to vote on, to send a follow-up letter, we need a quorum. Our next meeting is August 8th, but we can probably work something out where we can get 4 people together for an up and down meeting. And then shoot a letter back, or follow-up letter back.
If they wanted to come to, say, the July 27th meeting, is that what you're saying?
No, we would meet as a group, as a conservation commission.
Well, you could meet the 8th, we have an August 10th meeting. The planning board.
Oh, true that, yeah.
I thought you meant the
Oh,
next.
well, our next meeting is August 8th,
Yep.
but we're not entertaining any cases on the 27th?
No, I thought you meant that
July?
you were gonna pull 4 people to somehow get a meeting before the 27th of July.
Yeah,
Oh, if you can do that, I guess I would offer that if,
Yep, that'd be
It
fine.
will be-
if there was a desire, I think, 'cause my understanding is, you know, there's a couple plan edits, they'll take somebody a couple hours probably, and then some response letters. I don't know what our agenda looks like right now for July 27th, I haven't seen much on it. Okay. So we would just need ideally 7 days ahead of time, granted we could, if you were tied up against a deadline. So ideally we would look for revised plans, say in the week, or I guess at the minimum, maybe by the end of next week, since some of these are just plan edits. Sue, is that gonna be, How many days does Concom need to notify, or do you not need to notify that for public?
Well, it's not a public hearing, so it can just be posted a couple days in advance
Okay.
legally. And
So I
in,
guess
in emergencies, it can be posted almost simultaneously by RSA. This isn't an emergency, but still.
You have the option too, okay.
Right, we're good.
Okay, then I guess I'll leave it to Sue to coordinate with,
Yeah, with
Sam
Sam.
for the Conservation Commission. They'll host, I guess, pull a quorum together before the 27th.
Yeah,
Update the memo.
yeah, and get a communication to the board.
Yeah, and so that, and do you feel the applicant, would you want the applicant to go, or is this more of,
No.
if they provide the information?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
but and this would be for a planning board meeting, July 27th, 2 weeks from now.
I'm sorry, I thought you said the Concom met on the 27th.
No, so the planning board does, the
Yeah.
Concom is going to try and, they're gonna pull a quorum together before then.
Special
And
meeting.
Sue sometimes will just, if they meet 2 days before, and she can't get a letter out, Sue will give an update to the board as a member of the Conservation Commission.
Got it.
So with that, obviously, we've had some comments from board. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with this. It's fairly complex commercial development, I'd say, with, that we've seen in recent times. And I'd rather be thorough now than, have questions later on from abutters and the public, so. With that, anybody have any final comments, or wanna make a motion to?
Motion for continuation, and I'm assuming the applicant is agreeable to July 27th?
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, I move to continue, yep, I need that. 2200. Case number 2200-002-SUB to July 27, 7 PM.
It's 007.
Pardon me?
It's 007.
The
Yeah.
concrete company.
Oh,
Okay,
Case-
out the wrong one.
Okay, this is for, continuing for case number 22-007-SIT, July 27th, 7 PM.
Right,
second.
thank you.
Okay, with that, all in favor, of approving?
Aye.
Aye.
4, okay. So we'll see you on July 27th. As soon as you can get documents to Kevin, he generally just fire things off in emails.
Going home to do it right now.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
very much for coming.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, I'll let Ed resume his seat, so. Ed will probably say it, but Mr. Davies will go back to alternate status for this one. Thank you.
So seated, and, yeah, Mr. Davies will return to his role as a alternate, participating in discussion, but, not voting. So, before I call the next case, I wanna thank everybody that's here tonight, cause it's a long night, it's hot in here, the air in the building is not great for air movement, and everybody's being very calm and patient, and I appreciate that. The next item on the agenda is case number 22-008-SIT. This is a continued case application from Kung Food LLC, requesting approval for a wedding venue business and restoration for an existing structure. The property is located at 2 Mary Hill Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire, identified as tax map 4, lot 2-1. So I believe where we left off, there were some questions, and then we were waiting for some additional, to allow time for the applicant to have some further discussion with the fire chief regarding the site access or the fire lane. And also, we were looking for input from the police chief and give a chance for the town of Barrington and NHDOT to make comment. So Blair or Kevin, did we, I know we have some additional, we have a letter from the police chief, which is in our packet tonight. Is there anything else from any of those other parties that you're aware of?
Fire chief said he'd come, he's here.
Okay. I'll welcome him to the table in a moment. Before that, was there anything from NHDOT or Town of Barrington? No, okay. So I'll bring it to the applicant first, is bring us back up to speed and what's changed or where you're at, and and then I'll open the public hearing again.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Doug McGuire. I'm with the DeBay Group, and I'm here representing the owners of the property Kung Food LLC. So, at our last meeting, we gave our presentation, and there was some constructive feedback from the board on a few different items. And so, in the time between our last hearing and now, we were able to make some updates to the plans, pretty minor in nature, but I'll just quickly walk you through those, just so we're all on the same page. Before I start, does everyone have a copy of the plans? Because I do have extras if anybody needs a copy.
You're in our book.
Yeah,
Just, if anybody needs one, just let me know, I do have extras. So, one of the, I guess the two main items that were brought up were, one, the drainage. There was a request that maybe we do a little bit of belt and suspenders on the drainage, just to make sure that we can promote some potential recharge, or at least quell the potential for any erosion during large storm events. And what we did is exactly what we talked about. We added a stone berm, a stone trench right along the western edge of the property, of the parking lot, the gravel parking lot, from end to end. And so what that will do is, it's a clean stone, it's not a gravel, it's a clean stone that's wrapped in fabric. And the intent is that if there is supplemental runoff from the parking lot during larger storm events, that water will trickle in and will have storage capacity within the stone. It'll be promoted to infiltrate because it is in fill in that section. So there'll be some promotion of infiltration, and obviously if you had a very, very large storm that the capacity of that trench was to be exceeded, it would overflow in a sheet flow manner. So you're eliminating the concentration of like the gutter lines of the parking lot, because it would all go into that stone and then overflow out of that stone in a sheet flow manner. So in a very similar manner to how it would be leaving the site in the pre-development condition. So we added that in. Another item was, there was concern, this was brought up in the police chief's letter regarding parking on Mary Hill Road. We understand that that was something that no one wants to see. The updated plan, the site plan sheet 4, has several signs that have been added to Mary Hill Road showing no parking at any time along the roadway. And those are, I actually put four signs in, so even beyond the limits of our property, we have some signage to prohibit parking. We also added a no parking fire lane sign directly adjacent to the building, so that there's no inadvertent people parking right in that area, so that there is a fire lane available for the fire chief if and when they need to pull up adjacent to the building. We also, just for the record, when it comes to the parking requirements, because I don't think we talked about this in the full detail at our last meeting, but you do not have in your regulations the specific of a wedding venue, but we utilized what we felt was the most conservative, which was a restaurant use, which is one space per 3 seats plus 1 per 2 employees. And so we calculated that and put that in. We also looked at the other alternative of if this was just done by square footage, and you actually end up with like about a third less of the parking required. So this is certainly the most restrictive within your regulations. And I can also speak, having done other event venues in other communities that do have provisions, the 1 per 3 is very much in line with the parking demand. That being said, the police chief had concern, and certain board members had concern about the parking. We did add 6 additional parking spaces, and what we did to accommodate that is we squared off the gravel parking area, and instead of having islands, just have an entire parking area that's squared off, which would allow for 6 employee spaces. The reason why they're designated as employee spaces is because they would be effectively double stacked or blocked in by a full parking lot. But that's not a problem when you have staff that are working the event and they're gonna be there for the duration of the event. That's not a problem. So we have an additional 6 spaces shown, which brings our total to 64, which is 9 more than what's required, per the regulations. So we did try to add some additional parking. Certainly understand that you can't be parking out on the street, and, you know, we recognize that. And so we are comfortable with the parking at this point. We were comfortable with it without the additional 6, but I think it doesn't hurt to have some additional capacity, to add that. The only other plan-related changes that we made is obviously we added the details of the no parking signs to the detail section of our plan, so that those are in there. And we also added a detail of the stone trench infiltration system, so that contractors know how to adjust that. We also added the paved apron at the entrance, which was an item that was brought up by Blair, and obviously a good suggestion. So that has been added to the plan set as well. And I guess that's about it. I did not hear any further comment from the police chief beyond her initial letter. Obviously, the takeaway that I got is that, you know, they wanted to make sure there was no parking on Mary Hill Road, and that more parking would be a plus on site. So I think we were able to accommodate 2 of those items. And I also think it's important to note, and I don't know if the police chief was made aware of this, but this site, as we did talk about, had 3 curb cuts in its existing condition. You know, we had a curb cut on Route 4, we had a curb cut, and we had 2 curb cuts on Mary Hill Road. And I think it's important to note that in eliminating the curb cut on New Hampshire Route 4 and the closer curb cut to the intersection on Mary Hill Road is a huge traffic improvement from a traffic safety standpoint, and I think the police chief would appreciate that, obviously. It gives us, just for reference, it gives us over 230 feet of queuing from our site drive to the New Hampshire Route 4 intersection. So one of the big, I think, concerns can be, from a traffic standpoint, is that if you're leaving and, you know, Route 4 has traffic on it, and someone can't pull out right away, if the driveway is directly close to the intersection, you can start getting congestion and backup. That's not gonna happen with 200 feet plus of queuing, significant amount of vehicles that can queue there. And I think it's also important to note that this is an event venue only. This is not a restaurant that's gonna be having regular traffic throughout the week. The concentration of events are gonna be on the weekends and not at peak hour times necessarily. I mean, there may be different weddings that happen during the middle of the day, and I'm sure there could be venues that happen during the week as well. But for the most part, if you have a wedding that ends at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, that's certainly not the peak hour demand of traffic that's on Route 4. So for those reasons, I do feel comfortable with this plan in addressing the police chief's comments. And I guess with that, I think that was pretty much all the feedback that we received from the board at the last meeting. Let me know if I'm missing anything, but with that, I'll turn it back to the board for any questions.
Thank you. The only other request I think we had made was to possibly propose hours of like operation. You know, it's like if there's any kind of outdoor music planned as to when that might be turned off, and then, you know, just overall kind of hours of operation. Again, just as if it's a wedding venue and people tend to leave happy, you know, concerned about noise for the abutters. I don't know if the proposal of the building is really gonna be open on the backside towards Barrington, or more if it's gonna open up where the doors are now to the front, which would be Route 4, which noise would go that way.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, it's something that if it's a concern with the board, we can talk about it further, but our take was, it was very intentional, and the landscape plan sheet 7 supports this, that the congregating area, or the area that would have any outdoor activity, is entirely in the front. There is a walkway in the back, but that's basically to allow for the bride to come in from, you know, the back of the house and come forward into the wedding venue. So, I mean, the patio in the front that's adjacent to Route 4, and the robust landscaping, evergreen landscaping that we're proposing is all intended to block sound and activity, and also keep everyone very much contained within the property. It's gonna be a very dense, vegetation, intentionally. And we're also maintaining all the canopy that's there now, the mature growth, and infilling in the undergrowth with the additional. So, I really don't think that sound is gonna be an issue, heading towards Mary Hill Road as you get more into the residential component. I think we're really keeping the commercial component where it needs to be, which is adjacent to Route 4, but also doing so and making it try to be they don't want to be competing with the road noise from Route 4 either. So that's another reason for the buffering all the way along the road, including against Route 4, to try to help with the venue as well, so.
Okay, appreciate that. And I promised that I would check with either the town administrator or select board about the no park on Mary Hill Road. So the town, select board does have a no parking ordinance, so that's enforceable. So they would work with the police chief and you to, if they were gonna designate that area as no parking and enforce it. So I appreciate you putting signs for the plan. So again, that really doesn't actually come from this board. It would come from the select board and the police chief, but I think it's a good
We have
plan
no
to-
objection to that requirement, and obviously it's shown on the plans, and I'm sure the police chief, based on her comments, would be looking to enforce that, so. No issue on our end with that.
And then the only other thing I noticed, so with the gravel wrapped area that you were talking about for the drainage area, would that, so that's also the snow storage area, would that material be negatively impacted by like a plowing that way, or is that below grade, or to a point where the plow isn't gonna destroy it every winter season?
It's certainly intended to be set lower than the gravel area. There'll be a slight
Yeah,
step down. The other thing that we do with these, I don't think it's necessarily required, but we find it good practice, is that we do like more of like a blasted ledge type stone. The clean stone is like a fractured rock that's underneath. And then what we do is we put a layer that has a layer of fabric to and put like more of like an aesthetic stone on the edge. And so the benefit of that is that you're gonna essentially have a permanently clean section of stone below, and then from a maintenance perspective, that top course can be redressed, and if it gets silted up or sediment, it doesn't ruin the whole practice. It can just kind of be cleaned up. So, I mean, obviously, if there is, if it's a heavy winter and there is some sediment that gets pushed across, they would just be peeling off that upper 6 inches, which they're obviously much more inclined to do than have to redig up the 3 feet of material, so.
perfect, all right, thank you. Is there any other question or comment from the board before we reopen the public hearing portion of it?
I do have a question. If you have a parking area that's gravel only, how are you gonna designate the spaces where cars are to park?
It's a good question. We've implemented a few different ideas in other projects. Anything from using to keep that natural look, using like a telephone pole in the middle so that they know to where their the bumper is supposed to go to, type of thing. You can also use like the concrete bumpers, and that designates every space. In talking with the applicants, what they had said is that because this is a venue and not like a restaurant that people are coming and going, they're gonna have staff be parking these people as they come in, so the event starts, they're gonna say, okay, let's tuck it over, please, so that somebody doesn't take up 3 spots, inadvertently. So that's the plan for this venue, is to do
very
that.
good.
To go off of that, I think we had talked about the last one, I think there was some interest from the applicant of those ADA spaces, just to guarantee ADA compliance, of actually making them like block or pavement, I don't really care, but you have block right there, so it's up to you, whatever the aesthetic is you're looking for, but.
Yep, I
think that would be
I forgot that.
Yep, that's fine, so make sure that gets on there.
Yep, not a problem. We
More
will add
protect
that.
you, I'd hate to have an ADA violation. I'm glad you added the no parking signs. I guess my only question is, if they're only placed on one side of the road, unless it clearly states both sides, they would need to go on the other side of the road as well. I think there's a desire to have
Yeah.
no parking on that.
Yeah, the desire is there, I think, but for our purview, I don't think we require, since that's not their land. But
Okay.
I would would anticipate that if this is approved, that the town, would work on that, would most likely post both sides.
And then the last two, the paved driveway apron, it'd be nice, cause the town does have a requirement that it needs to be 12 feet from edge of pavement. If you could just put a dimension on whatever that length of that apron comes into the site, make sure it's 12 feet. And then, since this is a commercial operation, I didn't catch it last time, but that, we do have a requirement for, where is it? It's section, in the site plan regulations, it's section 14.4.2, number 4. It deals with commercial driveways require curbing and a minimum radius of 25 feet. I think in this case, you know, it would be odd to have curbing, but we might, because it's a commercial driveway, I don't know if we should consider if, I know there's some stone wall there that I think there's a desire to protect some of that, so if it stays at 15, I think we would need to, there could be a request for a waiver at any time, we could approve it, but I think technically we'd have to approve a waiver for 15-foot radius.
I would say,
Obviously, we don't specify if it's curved or uncurbed, what the radius is, but, I think the 15 you have works, I just think we might need to vote on a waiver for that. I don't know what anybody else's thoughts are, that was it for me. And thank you for the trench, I think that's gonna work well.
you're welcome.
Is there any other?
I also appreciate the improvements, you know, to address the police chief's comments.
Sure.
And, but I just was curious, I'm not sure if there actually is on Route 4 a pull-off lane there or not. And I was wondering if there was any input from
There is not.
DOT on this, as far as the increased traffic at that point.
Which direction?
Going, I guess that would be west, right?
So there, you're talking about to take a right into Mary Hill?
Well, if you were coming out of the venue and going west,
Out of the venue and going,
really either direction, but mainly if there was a pull-off lane, or whether there is, I'm not aware.
well, one thing I did do, I probably should have mentioned this as, part of my presentation, but we did add some additional, from our high precision aerial, work that we did, some additional detail of the road. I mean, the previous plan kinda just showed like our side of the road, and not much more of Route 4. We also showed where the abutter's driveway is on the plan. And so what I will tell you from Route 4 is that there is a widened shoulder for right turn maneuvers into Mary Hill Road, and there's also a significantly widened out for an acceleration lane already in place on Mary Hill. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that this use as is proposed is a pretty low volume generator use because it's event-based and, as I said, most likely off-peak. Certainly, the exiting of the site is gonna most certainly almost always be off-peak. You know, you're not gonna have a wedding necessarily ending at 4:30 or 5 on a Thursday or something. That's gonna be very, very rare. And also, I think it's important to note too, one of the owners mentioned this, is that, the traffic, you know, obviously a wedding or an event, people are gonna leave at the end per se, but there is drop off and people leave sparingly throughout as well. So you're not gonna have the entire venue empty out at the exact same time. People do leave as things are wrapping up and beforehand and that type of thing. So there is gonna be some distribution of the traffic, and it will be most likely almost always off-peak. So our take is that, you know, I believe this was at one point like an antique fair or something that would, I mean, those would not necessarily be off-peak. So I think we probably end up generating less impact with this use than maybe even the existing use that was there. So, I don't know if that provides any level of comfort, but
But you're saying there is actually a lane coming out of?
yes, there is, yeah.
Okay, I just wasn't aware.
Extra wide shoulder.
Okay.
If you're heading west, or if you're heading towards Concord, before you get to Mary Hill Lane, it's 2 lanes, and then as it gets right up to the peak, then it goes down to 1 lane, so it's a little wider because all of a sudden it's going down to 1 lane.
Making up for the,
And then about 400 feet away is Mary Hill. So I actually drove it and sat up on Mary Hill just to see. Taking that to go east, it's a dangerous turn. And I think the chief, cited that it's, statistically,
It's an existing problem, right?
it's an
Right.
existing, turn. So it is a dangerous section of the road, but no matter where you move it, it's right in that area, because you're almost coming up on a blind.
because it's on top of the hill.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see the cars coming until they've reached that peak, and then in some cases, cause I sat there were 2 cars coming, it's already merged into 1 lane, but there was still 2 cars coming, at the same time, because they're,
There's usually a drag race for the last
yeah.
stretch.
Yeah, so, it's a tough one. I was wondering if you could speak to kind of the longer term plan that we didn't have for last
I was
time?
gonna say, can we even discuss it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, does everyone have a copy of that?
I think so.
This is, the blow,
Yeah, so we can, I think in general, if parcels are co-owned or abutting, we can have some level of conversation on it, again, for future planning purposes. But it has to be, I think it has to be in some ways pretty limited in scope and part of like conceptual.
yeah, and I think, and I'll certainly be brief, but I think we mentioned this at our last hearing, and I had said that we'd try to come in with something because the owners of the venue also have this property under agreement. And so, the thought is to do a complementary use to the wedding venue. And so what we were hoping to do, because it is a fairly large, property, over, about 33 acres or so, of land. And so recognizing that we want some commercial development in the front, I think that's the intent, obviously, of, the Route 4 properties. We're proposing a roadway to bring us in to the property so that we only have 1 curb cut off of, Route 4. And from that, on the, western side, we have, a created 2.4 acre lot that is showing right now an 8,800 square foot, commercial footprint. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say, but this could be like the size of, say, a butcher shop or something along those lines. It's the exact dimensions that we've done on other projects, with this user. So that's a commercial pad, for that side. Now, on the right-hand side, we have a transitional area, and they're very serious about this because they think it'll be a complement to the wedding venue. And so what that's gonna be, that's proposed as sort of like a farm stand type use with additional plantings, they wanna do some blueberry bushes, along the wet area adjacent. They wanna plant, apple and, peach trees through the area. That's what the circled area is, like almost like an orchard, a small orchard. And the thought is that this would be a complement to the venue in that, pictures or whatnot, you can get someone they can use that, but also it would be functional because it would be a farm stand. It would have a sales building, and its own parking and everything. So it would stand alone and be a real use as well, but also complement and not be like a heavy commercial use right adjacent to the wedding venue. So to kind of blend. And then our thought was to do a smaller multifamily development in the back, utilizing the remainder of the viable upland that goes deeper into the site. We utilized your calculations on, you know, obviously buildable area, units of, I think you require, or you're allowed like 1 unit per, or per 2 acres with, 30,000 square feet of upland per unit. So this would be, what we're showing is like a 12 unit townhouse style development. The good thing about this development is that the grade of this property drops fairly significantly as it goes towards the rear of the property. So what we're doing is we're creating a natural buffer so that the units, the townhouse units, would be built into the hill with the back of the units facing towards Route 4. So there could be a garage under as they come around, and then their second, call it their second floor, the living floor, would come out and be set that much lower behind the commercial. So there could be some natural buffering that stays and maintains. And also, we think it's more realistic because you're not gonna get a commercial use in that further back area because it's dropping off fairly significant. You're gonna lose visibility. And so it seemed to be a good transitional product to do a multifamily development adjacent to the residential that continues as far back, and then yet still have the commercial pads in the front. So that's our concept. You know, obviously, we understand that would be a non-binding, any discussion feedback that we receive from you, but we would like to hear your feedback if you have any, just because, you know, they would like to move forward with this as a next potential option.
Yeah, so I think the next step for that, if this is at a point where it's getting ready, would be to get on the agenda for conceptual for those pieces of it. The only thing I would speak of towards this, the current plan that's in front of us, was if something was like this was gonna come forward and it's common ownership, it would be an excellent opportunity to extend the roadway driveway over to the parking lot at the wedding venue, which moves all those 50 cars that are coming out of the venue further down Route 4, coming out of the one commercial spot instead of, again, out of your control at the moment is the concern with that Mary Hill crest. You know, like we said, heading west before Mary Hill, it's 2 lanes, so it's passing zone, it's 55 miles per hour, comes up to a crest of a hill, and right at that crest is where they merge into 1 lane. So as people have expressed and witnessed, you tend to get people trying to race each other to get past each other, and then you have very little sight line for people that wanna go east off of Mary Hill, so take a left off of Mary Hill, heading towards the Lee Circle. So any chance to kind of improve that, again, I understand, where the flow of this is working, you know, I think everybody envisions, you know, yes, 50 cars all at once, where realistically it may be smaller than that, maybe 30 that go out, at the end of a wedding or an event. So that'd be something to possibly consider doing. You know, right now it doesn't make sense because we're not there with this plan, and we're not talking about those other lots, but something to consider as you move forward with that. But I would
That makes
encourage you
sense, and we'll certainly factor that in, you know, knowing that that's a concern. I mean, obviously, they haven't purchased that property yet, so I don't know if we can do anything at this stage, but it could be something as we come back with this moving forward.
Okay. So I'd like to open the public hearing, again. So, public hearing, anybody that is in a butter or would like to speak for the application, please come up first and just identify yourself. Keep all your comments, please, towards the board. Anybody against or just has general questions about this application, would be next. And then, Chief Vilchek, please, if you could come up, I appreciate you being here tonight and, in person and having comment.
Thank you again. Chief J. Vilchuk, Nottingham Fire Rescue. I'm here to address some comments that were forwarded to me from the original letter that I had sent. And the first one has to do with no parking signage on the access roads. No parking signs had to do with the fire lane, like you had said. Could you explain or show me on your plan, or is the signage on both sides of the driveway?
So, what we're proposing is there's going to be signage all along the road for no parking. What I also did is I added signage directly adjacent to the building right in here. There's a signage right here that says no parking anytime fire lane.
Just one sign on that side?
Just on this side, I can add,
Just one sign?
yeah,
And I'm not sure that's gonna be sufficient, but the width of that driveway is
22.
Okay, 20 feet is usually the fire lane width, so both sides would have to be signed, and have to be intuitively obvious too, so I don't think one sign would really be
That's-
sufficient, okay?
That's fine if we
So
had
we're- Okay.
another,
There's a light pole there too, so you could put the sign on the light pole.
My concern is that it's only 22 feet, and that is the access and the only access there, so it's gonna have to be intuitively obvious, because people tend to take liberty with blocking areas, okay, that's good. The lack of detailed, information, not the conceptual portion, but this project itself, I'm commenting on the site plan portion of it only, I'm not commenting on any life safety, fire safety, any other stuff. But I just wanted to bring up some of those elephants in the room that, construction plans, I haven't seen, layout, I haven't seen, the occupancy designation, I haven't seen for this, because wedding venue is kind of a unique, in fire code, wedding venue doesn't exist, okay? So we have to identify exactly what it is, okay? Capacity, the exits, the fire, continue.
do you mind if I sit?
Oh, no, absolutely, no problem.
We're kind of chatting anyway.
Yeah, sure. Those sort of things I would expect to see sometime during this process, that the comments that I provided were site plan only, but, there's a way to go here for this project.
So just to speak,
Like an as-built plan?
well, just to speak to that, I think what the chief is speaking to, many of those items are the, the renovation of the building and the building code related items, and all of that would fall under the building permit, and so, and that, you will need to receive that information. And so, any approval of the site plan obviously doesn't alleviate the requirement for the building permit.
In addition to the building permit, though, this is an occupancy type, structure, so there are more requirements there. In fact, review by the state fire marshal's office, I requested their cut on what the seating capacity is gonna be, what the exit strategy is gonna be, so that we have, there's information I'm gonna be.
I can tell you that the owners are working with an architectural group, obviously that have access to fire protection engineers, and I think all that type of information is.
I'll take their information on a signed letter,
And review.
identify it,
Yeah.
yes, and I'll review that, okay, and I'll take all the plans too, so that's, I think we're communicating, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But that will fall under building permit review, essentially Dale will receive
Yep.
those documents.
Yeah, so, exactly, so if there's when there is final action on this plan, one way or the other, before an occupancy permit would be granted, or building permit, that would come from, a mix of the building inspector and the fire chief. Yep.
My site plan.
The only thing it could change is if through that process, it caused a revision of the site plan, then it would have to come back before the board.
Understood, and I think, I think the site-related items will supplement the signage, just to make sure that that's clear. But I think the rest of those items, I think the chief's gonna be able to have that opportunity with the building, permit process.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chief.
Thanks, chief,
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
it.
Is there any other public comment for or against questions in this case? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to the board for additional comment, questions.
I think I'm good, I just wanna make sure we capture those plan changes, but those will be in the minutes.
I think there was one potential new waiver that would be required. You could, Mr. McKinnon, do you have a piece of paper, do you have a waiver request? A blank waiver request?
You want me to read it?
I think it's the applicant. Do you have a blank waiver request by any chance?
I do not.
You can use it on a piece of paper.
You could use it,
Do you have a piece of paper? Because there was one, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can give you this.
So it's either, we were talking about, there'd either be a waiver probably required for the curbing section of the site plan, or revise it to meet that section.
Well, as long as,
16,
as long as the board's okay with that as proposed, I mean, I don't mind changing it, I think it would open up and probably, you have to affect a little bit of the stone wall area, but if, you know, if you wanna see more radius, we can widen that out, it's not an issue to do so.
That's your section. No, I agree, I think, you know, I'd like to avoid impact to the stone walls, and like you said, it'd be different if this was like a business that was receiving constant traffic over a 12-hour period. It's also a calming effect too, people aren't shooting into the driveway.
The only other general comment I had, so with the landscaping, obviously you have a significant amount of landscaping proposed. The area that's on Route 4, I just wanna make sure that whatever is placed in that area doesn't impact the sight line of Route 4.
Yep, understood.
It's shown that it would, but just keep that, please keep that in, keep that sight line as open as possible.
Yeah, the good news is that because of those widened shoulders, and obviously we have no proposed plantings that are outside the right of way, so everything is within the property, and, shouldn't have any issue with, what we're proposing. And also, it's important to note, all the, you know, the bubbles in the circles, those are mature growth widths. So, you know, it's not like that circle's gonna come 5 times bigger, that's a mature growth, diameter.
Okay. So you
And
can,
you're planting relatively young, beautiful grant, because you're gonna have to, right?
What's that?
You're planting relatively young trees,
Yes.
which will take some time to reach their maturity.
Yes, so there certainly won't be quite as much overlap as you're seeing, at least upon initial planting, but they were kind of stuffed intentionally so that there'll be some decent buffering right out of the gate, and they'll only grow together more as they mature.
Are there any other questions, comments on the board?
Did we get clarification on hours?
I think previously it was just,
We'd love to, up to the applicant to kind of come up with some, because I think it's a good, we've done it with other site plans, a few others I can think of, one being a auto garage, one being an event, outdoor event item. So again, it's just trying to set so that even if it's quiet, that, yeah, you're not having a lot of people come out at, you know, midnight or beyond.
Yeah, I can, you know, the owner's here tonight, I can check with him to see what his, we didn't talk specifically about that. I think we said last time maybe there was like a 10 or 11 cutoff on any type of outdoor type thing, and then things were off. I mean, I think they're not planning on these things going to 2 AM or anything. Sure. But I don't know if Paul, if you wanna.
Yeah, I think the 10 o'clock cutoff is gonna be what we're looking at. Same as the time we close at 9 o'clock. We're not an after hours bar. So it'll probably be around 10 o'clock.
Yeah, so if that's something you'd want to set and put on the plan, I think that'd be helpful, that, you know, as a cutoff.
Yeah, we can add that
I
as a
think that
note.
would be assuring to the abutters, because one of the concerns that I heard from the abutters who spoke the first time was noise.
Butters and also our emergency personnel, so,
I think partially too, because we don't have a noise ordinance to strictly
right,
prohibit certain sites.
we have it, yeah, noise is considered of control for pollution under site plan. So, but again, I'm thinking back to just the emergency responses of, you know, if they can set up or they want to be present, we rely heavily on surrounding towns as well, so it's good for them to be aware of when things might be winding down.
So we'll add that note to the site plan.
Is that the waiver request?
Yeah, that's pretty cool reading. Yeah, so that could go on, I guess, the site plan, just.
So we have a request for a waiver from section 14.4.2, 5.
Or sorry, there'll be 4.
4.
But it's 4. Change that number.
Amend that to 4. If you're okay with that, I'm amending your 4 for driveway radius, a request of a waiver from the above referenced section to allow a 15-foot driveway radius where 25 feet is required.
I'll make a motion to approve this waiver request.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. McKinnon, second by Ms. Mooney. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 6-0. So that brings us back to, if there's either no further discussion, then it would be a motion to approve or disapprove with conditions.
Somebody else have anything? I'll make a motion to approve, case number 22-008-SIT, with our standard conditions, as well as some of the comments discussed tonight, placing the, projected hours for the business to end at 10 PM. Adding pavement or a block to the ADA spaces. An additional no parking fire lane sign, per the fire chief's request. Dimension for the driveway apron. I think that was it, for design comments.
Hours?
Yep, that was it, I got that, yeah.
Second.
The motion by Mr. McKinnon and second by Mr. Anderson. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a new case, a new application. It's case 22-009-SUB, application for Robin Como, requesting a two-lot subdivision. Property is located at 176 Stevens Hill Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire, identified as tax map 49, lot 4. Stevens Hill Road is designated as a scenic road. Everybody for the applicant, please just identify yourselves and then just give us a brief narrative of the plan, and then we can come back to the board for the application side of it.
Okay, I'm Ross Cablesa, I'm the land surveyor for the project, and it's Alden.
Boschman.
Yeah, hard to pronounce his name. And he did a after-fact dredge and fill for the property. So, Robin Como has 17.5 acres of land, and she has a house, they lived there a long time. And her son would like to have a place to build a house, so we want to cut a 5-acre lot off the side. We're at Stevens Hill Road. And they want to build out back. They can build in front, but they'd rather be out back and be private. You come about halfway back on the property, there's a wetland, isolated wetland. Then in the very, very back, there's a small wetland. We've got good test pit results. That's over 5 acres, so there's no state subdivision approval required. And this will come up tonight, but during his development of the land, he wanted to, I guess he was gonna cut some wood out back, but he built a driveway, followed along the property line, rather than cut through the middle of the field. And he went through a wetland. If you people walked up there, you'd probably say this isn't a wetland, but it is. It just ferns, wetland plants, and the colors. But it's been agricultural land since the 1800s, so it's land that's hayed and driven over and all that. So he did he filled some wetlands. State knows about it. One option was to restore it and put a driveway on, just cut off all across the field and do a whole lot more impact on the land. The other option was to get blessing of keeping the driveway where we have it. So that's about it, 99% of it right there. All of them, wants the same thing. I mean, we have some butters that are very favorable way that we want to do it.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, and again, my name's Alden Boschman from Keyland Enterprises. I'm a private land consultant, wetland scientist. Roscoe himself is a wetland scientist, but he asked me to take and address the violation issues and possible permitting for the driveway to leave it where it was. The biggest thing that people need to recognize is there's two different levels of wetlands. You have your, what we call poorly drained, and then you have your very poorly drained. The very poorly drained are those wetlands with cattails that we all recognize as super saturated. You walk out, it's obvious, the ducks are landing. Your poorly drained are those wetlands, and like this is a wet meadow area that in the summertime, and for years, this was actually mowed. It's so dry, in the summertime, you can drive it through the dry here. So, you know, I understand how things happen. The property owner had no idea whatsoever that he was impacting wetlands. It was mowed years past. It was considered a farm path of some sort. And so he thought he was doing a good thing, keeping it off to the side of the field. At the end of the day, like Roscoe said, you know, we could take and very easily just put the house right next to the road, but this is a scenic area. It's a beautiful farm area. You have some nice farm fields and so forth. So, you know, we looked at, you know, the different options, and honestly, given the type of wetland that is there now, the functions and values and so forth, there's very little impact to that wetland resource there now. And so we've been working with the state through the permitting process. We met with the Conservation Commission, and so I was made aware recently too, apparently we need to address a conditional use permit if we leave the driveway here, so we're prepared to do whatever we need to do. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Haney, you've had a chance to review this application, and do you think is there enough information there for us to act on completeness tonight?
Yes, the application is complete, and there isn't much to it, but yes, there is. The only thing I did point out, and I didn't know how far we could go this evening, is because there is a restoration plan that is open, it would appear. You know, I don't know if anything has to be done with that before this can be approved, because the access point to the property is based on what this driveway is. I don't know if ultimately it would have to be changed or anything like that, but push it, sort of separating the two out, what you have before you is sufficient for a complete application for a subdivision.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion by the board regarding the completeness of the application? And if not, a motion would be in order, please.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd move to accept application for case 22-009-SUB.
A motion by Mr. Anderson and a second by Mr. McKinnon. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those approve, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 5-1. Did you vote?
Yes, I vote yes.
Okay, yeah. All right, so the application is considered complete. Now we can get into the, yes, please.
I'll make a motion that case number 22-009-SUB is not a development of regional impact.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, motion by Mr. McKinnon, second by Mr. Anderson, that this is not a development of regional impact. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 6-0. Okay, now I'll bring it back. So now we can get into the further discussion of the actual application itself and the plan. Is there anything beyond what you already have had a chance to state to us that
Basically,
you'd like to add?
if he has to move the driveway, I mean, there's plenty of room. This is a viable lot, whether we stick with what we have and move the driveway. So, I mean, how long do you think it's gonna take through the state to finalize this?
That could be up in the air, but regardless of the violation, we could put a house in the front tomorrow and just reclaim the wetland, end of story.
Yeah,
But I don't think everybody in town, you know, being a scenic area, I don't think it's nice to put a house in the front right next to the road. And so where they had it positioned, it was actually in the back of the lot up on this beautiful knoll overlooking this beautiful field. And the wetland area, there's a nice tree buffer, so from the road, you won't even see the house.
Yeah, the poorly drained wetland is basically forested.
Yes. Creates a nice buffer.
Do you know what the, so we'll get to that part of it, because obviously there's some stickiness here that we'll have to figure out the legality of for how we proceed, where there's possibly a known violation with zoning and with the state, and there's compliance, that's in process. So we'll kind of get to that and maybe seek our town council's input for that piece of it, now that we've accepted the application. The area that's shown in the back portion of it for the contiguous uplands, do you know what the actual square footage of that is?
All the space within the setback there?
All the space within the
Yeah,
setback?
we're 4.5 acres of upland, our lot.
That's what's within the setbacks?
Within
So
the
I'm talking about just the part, just the
part in
part in the
back.
back, not adding it into the,
That would probably be a couple acres. I mean, it's way more than required.
usually, we like to see is the square footage of that area, that's where the proposed house is planned for, to be shown that meets the 30,000 square feet.
So, well, I'm showing the entire buildable on the entire lot is 4.5 acres. So you want me to break it in two pieces because of the hourglass part?
No, so it's showing us where you actually plan on, so the way our regulations are.
I am showing.
We're saying, we wanna know where the 30,000 square foot area is for a house that meets our regulations for a house lot to be placed. So if you have something like this where you have two areas that are uplands, but they're separated, that's not contiguous, so they're not additive. We wanna know if the plan is for a house back here, that is over 30,000 square feet of contiguous uplands.
And it's not the term upland, because, yeah, the upland is there, it's the definition in our ordinance for contiguous buildable area.
Yeah.
So that's the area within the setback, so there's essentially two different areas, and we
Okay,
just,
yeah.
it's that buildable area thing. That's the 30,000 square feet.
Yeah,
Upland
I've
is
been
buildable.
surveying for 40 years and the rule kind of goes, so that is your current.
Yeah, so the
In
30,000.
the past it wasn't, but.
Right, so now it's a 30,000 contiguous buildable area, which it's certainly, like, to your point, it probably well exceeds, I mean, the front portion potentially could be 30,000 within that little box, but we more so care about that back, it's almost a square, essentially. What's this area within those setbacks?
But we also, 60,000 is your other, you want 30,000, I thought you had a total of 60,000 or a block of 30, is that how your rule goes?
No, you can show a 200 by 200 square,
Yeah.
So 200 by 200 square.
or 30,000 square feet of
Contiguous land.
contiguous land that meets our setbacks and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that could just be, you could draw show a rectangle that's 30,000 square feet within that and call that your 30,000. Basically, it looks like you drew a 30,000 square foot square that
Yeah.
encompasses your well, your septic, and wherever the house falls within that, it's fine.
Yeah, so that back area,
Test pits
that back
be there.
rectangle or square area would be
It's
fine.
suitable buildable.
I'm just saying, we just need to see what that actual area size is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, again, you can't add that to the front. If the front was where the planned house is gonna be, then if that was showing us 30,000 square feet and meeting all the setbacks and everything, that'd be fine. Or if the back is where
Alden
the planned
just
house
did
is.
some math and it's 72,000 in back, so I can
Just
put
put
a
that
note on the plan, make it
Yeah.
square.
Yeah, that's all.
But that section, if that's where,
I'm not as good as Roscoe, but I did some quick calculations on the fly here.
yeah.
Plus minus, yeah.
And then, the only other parts, obviously, we have a driveway setback, it looks like it would, there's plenty of room to have at least a 10-foot setback.
We're about 25 feet from property line.
From that, I don't know what the distance is around from that cemetery that's existing, usually I think the state mandates that, I think it's 25 feet.
Yeah, we are, yeah.
I believe we have somewhere in our regulations that talks about the width of the road during subdivision, that may be more for major subdivisions, I have to find the section again, but basically usually if if the width isn't adequate to meet what the town is looking for the future, it usually adjusts that one, you know, section.
So if it's not 50 feet wide, you want an easement to make up for that? Or do we make up for half of it and whoever's on the other side does half of it?
Especially if it's a narrow section of road that's coming into it.
I think the recent applications is if you have a center line and you have the land to give, the easiest thing, instead of trying to figure out the other guy's boundary, is if you just have to show a
Yeah,
sliver.
a different town like Deerfield said, well, we don't have enough, but we'll only make you do half of what you need. Go from the center line, rather than, if we need 10 feet, don't make us. But it's just a dotted line on the plans showing a slope easement for widening. We're not,
It's essentially an access easement, correct, to the town of it's just, yeah, they could do ditch work, they could, best, and then just have to go, the selectmen have to sign off on it.
Yeah.
Once the easement document's prepared, it just goes to the town administrator. Put that on the docket for the selectmen.
okay.
Yeah, I have to find that section.
Blair, not to put you on the spot, but do you have, I know you had your staff, do you want to go through your review first before we jump into additional pieces of it, or?
Yeah, I did ask if the I needed to upgrade, replace, or install a new culvert for the existing driveway, wetland, you know, not knowing what it looks like, not knowing its age. It does appear that the driveway is more than 10 feet from the sideline, side lot line, you know, the gentleman confirmed about 25 feet, so I think we are good on that one. And then I just made a comment about the condition, the condition, like, as it relates to a permit with regards to the driveway. You know, what its status is and how that affects, you know, what we're doing here today. Beyond that, I mean, fairly simple. For that subdivision, I think it's more about, where does that end up going, and as it relates to what we're trying to do today.
And we do have, in our document, so we do have the restoration plan approval from NHDES. We have a letter, from an abutter, I believe, Mr. Rowell, that addresses a number of points. One being, that gets addressed by the town building inspector. The existing driveway, it basically doesn't have a permit for it. It was installed, and then obviously the complaint with the DES, and the items that are ongoing there, and that, and then a discussion about, you know, approving an after the fact, permit. And that should occur.
I was gonna say that.
There was one mention on here about a prior plan. The comments stated, the plan needs to show the roadway boundaries as shown on the subdivision plan, map 48, lot 2, and lot 2-3. The road right-of-way boundary does not follow the stone wall along the front of map 48, lot 2-3.
Can you, I don't understand what you just said.
Yep, sorry. So this is an abutter's comment. Number 5 in the letter was, the plan needs to show the roadway boundaries as shown on the subdivision plan, map 48, lot 2 and lot 2-3. So those are the ones across the street. The right-of-way boundary does not follow the stone wall along the front of map 48, lot 2-3.
Because they gave an easement. I think that's what you mean. Yeah, okay, I'm just showing the wall, but, you're saying, they gave their strip already, we might not have to give a strip.
The,
They gave some. Okay, so I will look at that.
there's a concern about surface water in that area, in that road water ends up in the front of their yard. There's a roadway in front of the cemetery has been cut down 2 or 3 feet over the years. The road base needs to be elevated, ditch lines installed, so water runs off the side before it goes to the cemetery. That part, we would probably look for our town road agents' input from and see how that applies to this application. This would be a good time to move the roadway away from the house at 163 Stevens Hill Road, which I believe is across the street. Moving the road and property lines 20 to 30 feet away from the house and adding a sightline curve may slow down traffic, give the town a chance to widen the roadway, and make the front of the yard 163 more livable. Plus it would help preserve the nice old maple that's there. I think that's for a minor subdivision.
Also, we can't move it, it's not the property
Yeah.
that's owned by the applicant.
Correct. I don't think that's something that they could do, even if they were to agree to give up additional property on their side for the roadway widening. That'd be something they could probably choose to do and talk to the town about, but I think it's beyond what we could require for a minor subdivision. We also have a letter from the building inspector, code enforcement, Dale Sylvia, just addressing some of those points. Basically that he has been in contact with New Hampshire DES, Department of Environmental Services, since 2020. And they had been on site, and that's when a restoration plan was created. And then he was also had a chance to inspect the driveway, which he is indicating has never been an approved driveway. In the event of a subdivision, the driveway would need to be approved by the planning board, code enforcement, and road agent. And basically, in regarding to the restoration plan, it's not within his authority necessarily to address that. That's the state's authority, and they're in the process of that now. So him intervening would not, but they would still have to comply with all current zoning. I believe is how I summed up that. I believe that's all the letters we had in regards to this one. So the way we would normally address a proposal, say that that fill hadn't occurred, and the proposal was to put the driveway there and fill that wetland. We do have a conditional use permit now. Prior to that, you would have to go to zoning and get a variance directly. We have certain criteria that can meet for conditional use. But generally, if there's a way to avoid filling the wetland, that is one of the criteria, I believe, of that. And in this case, there would be a way to avoid that wetland entirely if it came up the northern boundary of the property instead. If I understand what you're saying, you know, we also identify the two different levels of wetlands, but we have protection for both levels, one being more stringent, one slightly less with buffers and setbacks. Of course.
Yeah, that was gonna be my comment is, also by putting the if the driveway were to stay where it is, I think there would potentially be some difficulty in meeting the 8% driveway slope, cause you're kinda going through a lower area and then having to come back up the slope. If that driveway does go on the north side, you're up almost 8 feet higher, so you're closer to relative grade, probably less disturbance for the driveway overall. And I think,
You're saying if we move it, there's less,
so there's a requirement that driveways are supposed to be 8% or less for new driveways.
the entire part or just the first part?
The entire,
you look at the entire.
It's a fire and safety access, a fire truck in the winter trying to get up, it's kind of a dean, that's a safe slope to deal with. Looking at this, these are 2-foot contours, I mean, that 8-foot difference, I don't think there'll be an issue immediately. We've seen a lot steeper sites that can make 8% work, but I think it solves two issues. It gets you outside of the wetland entirely, and I think that's how we can start to get back to addressing this, I guess, after the current process, the after the fact permitting. Because my question was, if they do move forward, yes, they need to also supplement their application with a conditional use permit. But if the applicant proposes to move the driveway to the north and continues to, or follows through with a restoration plan, does that leave it now under state jurisdiction because it's not part of, that is not part of it? We're kind of, I agree, we might need some feedback here on if a conditional use is needed, or if it's avoidable if they move the driveway. I do agree with Dale that the process has been started with the state. It's unfortunate that I think there's some deadlines that haven't been met, and I'm not really sure if it just because they were thinking about this project and wanted to get some feedback first, but I would like to see it follow through with the restoration side of it with the state, since that's been started. And it's less, if we can avoid a conditional use permit, it's ideal.
Yeah, just wanna show you, the alternative. I mean, right now, we're a straight shot. The alternative is to build hundreds more feet of road through the middle of the field. And we've got letters from the neighbors that would think that would be a nasty thing to do.
That's the alternative, yeah.
That's the alternative.
If you use the current
Right.
non-approved curb cut, I don't know why you wouldn't move the curb cut.
Well, so that's the issue
100
too, it's
feet.
not
Coming from here,
Yeah,
Just come in straight.
coming straight from the, next to the property line.
The building inspector's letter covers that there was discussion that this was
Logging road.
told to the town, this was a logging road, and that it was stated that this would need, through the planning board process, require a driveway permit, which,
And forestry has
then
told,
it's straight, then it straightens out. I mean, the only requirement if you move it up there is to meet the 10-foot driveway setback that we have in the ordinance, but there's plenty of space there.
this is our, this is all field. We'd be putting a driveway right through the middle of the field, rather than on the edge of a wall, that's all trees, and that'd be a nice one.
I understand, but I think if you keep it where you're proposing it, you have to submit a conditional use permit and prove that you meet the criteria of the conditional use permit, and then I think we're gonna have more questions about how legally we can, where the state status is, and how we can, what
But if-
first, the chicken or the egg, I'm not
But
sure.
trying to be more practical, yes, there is another way. So, but
But then you're, I mean, the 8% thing too, like you'd have to prove that you, what,
I can make it 8%. Right now, I can just slab the hill.
and that's fine, but then it still keeps it within it comes down to this after the fact wetland permitting. And so if you draw that though, I look at that, there's not a difference of hundreds of feet, there's a difference of, I don't know off the scale, that's not a drastic difference, and because now you have to meet your 8%, that's not a drastic difference in driveway
Well,
length.
you may not have to be stressed, and this is our pier. I mean, you just have to disturb, rip it all up, and,
It's there, but it's already been told by the state that you need to restore it.
yep.
Excuse me, it's been told by the state, but just so you know, I mean, the landowner was misinformed at the beginning. I got involved after the fact, I took a look at this area of wetlands. If I was to take you folks out there tomorrow, a lot of you wouldn't even recognize it as a wetland. And so basically, it's a matter of using some common sense. The family, they have a house up here, they enjoy the view of the field itself, they would like to leave the open field. And when we met with the Conservation Commission, they shared that same sentiment. This is a beautiful scenic area. To leave a field open is a nice thing. To actually intercept that and go through the middle, you're impacting the field. Not only that, but we have to deal with utility poles. And utility pole companies, they typically want us to run along the driveway, and to have an unsightly power on a pole and lines through the middle of the lot, it just didn't seem to make a lot of sense. So, we looked at the option here, and so, the state, I've had meetings and discussions with the state reviewers. The state is open to permitting this. The problem or hurdle I have at this point is just the town's conditional use permit, if we can work with that.
Have they told you that the conditional use permit is required before they will provide approval, or they need additional feedback, is that?
That just popped up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just popped up.
And also, I mean, the utility pole, underground utilities are required anyway underneath the driveway, so.
Well, that's a good thought. I didn't realize that either, but,
Yeah, you do a pole to get to your property and it has to be underground.
So just so you realize too, at this point, yes, there was a violation, there was, an approval for restoration. We've since, discussed it with the state inspector, and we put together a full application for an after-the-fact permit. And that application at this point it went to the town, and is into the state, and has been accepted as, acceptable at this point at the state level for review.
It's been accepted,
For review. For review,
Okay.
correct.
If you were there, you'd feel so late. I mean,
But
we would like to do a site
I'm gonna
walk.
cut that off, we're getting late, so.
Yep.
Right now, as it is, there's a letter of action compliance from the state, yes, that's where it stands. Right now, 2 years ago, it was found is problematic with the state, they issued a letter on it, so that's where we're at. You're appealing it or going through a process now, I understand, but regardless, where we're now is that it's out of compliance, so. Understanding that, and that process has to go through, and if it goes through and it's successful and they don't require it to be restored, that's one piece. Then this board's gonna have to have discussion about either a conditional use permit after the fact, or,
Done yet.
and then if that gets voted down, then it would be a variance, potentially. I am fine with going to our council just to confirm, this is kind of a gray area for us, where there's a plan before us, where it has, state compliance things in the works, and zoning things that are in the works, potentially with the building inspector. As to what we can do, what we can condition, if we were to condition approvals or anything like that, where are we allowed to do that? So I'm fine for that part. So beyond that, I think that this is obviously a key part of it. There's a lot of unknowns that we can't answer tonight. But I wanted to, in the fairness for everybody, want to make sure that we at least had a chance to review the plan and have other discussion, knowing that section is probably gonna require us to have, need some time to get some answers on.
And I agree with the applicant that at this point, I think, unless it's seen, we're just gonna keep going off of, one person's word against another. I think it's, at this point, worthwhile to get a site walk so we can everybody can see
Right.
the site, schedule a site walk, and if there has been, I would say two, if there has been a wetland impact permit, I know it's not required to submit to the planning board, but obviously that probably includes some engineered crossings, and if there's additional impact needed, stuff like that, that would be good to get in the record through Kevin as well. But I-
Basically, we're just gonna remove what was put there. That was the restoration plan, basically.
Right, but I think you said there was a proposal in the state right now, though, for the after-the-fact permitting, correct?
One of these plans show that.
Right, so that, I think that's, it's along the alignment that we kinda see in our plan is, yes, that would require, to Ed's point, some degree of a conditional use. We have to figure out for town council how that procedure is, but it would be good to see the exact plan right there that you're proposing to the state,
The
because.
Conservation Commission has been seeing it, but no, we can give it to you too.
Right, 'cause it's gonna come to us anyways, part of a conditional use, but, I think as much information as we can, but I think at this point we need to do a site walk to discuss all the options.
Deputy understand.
Oh, definitely, but
Yep.
standing here is not.
That's fine, I think at this point with the feeling we'll do a site walk as well.
The only thing I'll add too, just so you know too, when a wetland application goes into the state, 5 copies come to the town, 4 get passed on to all of the towns. So the town should have copies in all the different files, the building department, planning.
Yeah, it goes to building, I don't think it goes to planning though, technically through, it does go to Dale Building Inspector.
But we did submit the complete package to the town.
Sure, yeah, it doesn't always trickle down to the planning board.
Yep, Ms. Mooney. Yep, Ms. Mooney, go ahead.
Excuse me, Kevin, did you receive a correspondence today from the Conservation Commission, from Dr. Smith, about this particular application?
From a Dr. Smith?
Well, I'm sorry. What?
It's from Sam.
Oh, from Sam, Sam.
Regarding,
This, case number,
did you email me, Sam? I didn't receive anything.
and I thought, Mr. Demera, you were gonna come in and sign, or you signed it and then delivered it.
Oh, from yesterday? You-
Didn't happen?
It got in late.
Oh, okay, never mind then, I have other things to say though. We, discussed this property at the Conservation Commission meeting, this Monday. And we realized that we had reviewed this, application, back in January or February of this year. But we were unaware of the, wetlands violation that was done in 2020, and also the follow-up restoration plan that came after that in 2021, because we were doing Zoom meetings. And there was a period of time where we weren't getting anything from the town clerk, because there was a change of guard at that point. I do have here a copy of a letter that was received by Robin Como and Anthony Como, dated January 22nd, 2021, saying that they had approved the restoration plan approval for degradation of the wetlands, and the wetland should be restored by July 1st, 2021, to restore 1,444 square feet of wetlands. That has not been done. And I think that needs to be addressed before we can move on with any further business.
Not if we're trying to keep it. So the state knows that we're trying to keep it, so that we're not gonna fix it, then put it back again.
Is there something from the state saying that you have an extension from the July 1st, 2021 deadline?
There's no, it was a verbal communication, and basically at this point, because they've accepted an application, basically that gives us extra time. But not only that, but the meeting with the Conservation Commission was February 14th,
Okay.
and I have minutes to that effect. And and I don't know if you were there personally, but the fact is,
Well, I read the minutes.
we specifically talked about this issue because we were totally upfront about it. We knew that it was something that we needed to be upfront with, and before we even went to these final steps, that was the whole discussion, and that was outlined.
Well, that was the purpose of the whole thing.
Yeah, that was the purpose.
Again, I don't wanna get, we're gonna need legal counsel on it, because regardless, even if this was a new application that hadn't been done, and you're proposing to go to the state to get a permit for dredge and fill, to fill that in, we could still deny it from this board. In fact, the variance could deny it, and you would not be able to fill and dredge it.
Yep.
Because we have that authority, so.
Yep.
So there's a couple of pieces here that we need our legal counsel interpretation on that part of it, so I'm not trying to
Yep.
solve it, but I wanna make sure we get every other item addressed, knowing that
Understood.
that is a big piece of this, but we kinda are stuck on that one tonight.
So you're saying, if the state says we can do it, we need a conditional use, but we also need a variance?
No, it depends, so last year we adopted, before it would have needed a variance.
Okay, so it's in lieu.
We
Right.
instituted a conditional use permit process for some conditions,
Oh.
so there's conditions lined out as to what would trigger those. And if that's not permitted, or not approved, then it would go to a variance, because the conditional use.
Right, we have another recourse. Yeah.
I think the move is to do a sidewalk, but can I throw one, like, 2 seconds? Just while I'm thinking of it from the plan perspective, we do have a requirement, I think it's a bound every 300 feet, so that new lot line, I just wanted to have you throw that in your plan. You're gonna need, what's that? I was trying to find the section here, but there's, in our subdivision regulations, we have a requirement, I think it's 300 feet. No more than 300 feet between bounds, so you just need a couple, and those intermediate bounds we've done as pins, with the granite required at the street.
And then the,
Via a waiver, or you can do granite bound for,
I'd rather do pins, so are you saying it, for me to put pins every 300 feet, I need a waiver, or that is?
no, it's granite bounds on the corners, if it's a
On the
straight, if
corners,
it's a
okay.
straight line, pins, I believe, are allowed.
Okay,
And then one other area, one thing that was mentioned was, utility poles going through the field. Subdivisions require underground utilities for new lots, so
so if you make a one-lot subdivision,
you can.
to get to the house, they have to have underground.
You can request a waiver from it, that would get, spoken on at the board, and a vote would have to occur. But generally, any new lots created in town, they're supposed to have underground utilities. So is there any, I wanna be cognizant of the time and the people in the room. I'm gonna open the public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to speak, for, against, or just has general questions about this specific application? If you do, please come forward and, identify yourself, and again, just please address the questions towards the board, as opposed towards the applicant.
Robin Cabo, and I'm the property owner of 176 Stevens Hill Road. When my husband and I bought this property in '92, this property was an old 18-acre hayfield that was overgrown with weeds and poison ivy. For over 25 years, my husband bush hogged and mowed the field to restore its beauty and to transform parts of it to provide a barrier for the deer and turkeys. In all this time, not once did our neighbor, the Rowells, talk to my husband or file any complaint saying that we were disturbing or damaging wildlife or wildlife habitat or wetlands. My husband took great pride in the appearance of our property. He maintained a farm lane when he bush hogged along the stone wall that abuts the Rowells' property that went from the top of the knoll down to the road. He always bush hogged and mowed this area that's in question. After my husband passed away suddenly 3 years ago, I was not able to keep up with the maintenance of the field. The area in question started to grow up too fast with bushes and trees. My husband and I had hoped one day one of our sons would want to build on top of this knoll. So when my son Tony proposed the idea to me, I was very excited, even more so now that my husband has passed. It means the world to me to be able to have my children near me. Tony started clearing out scrub brush and trees from the site where he wants to build his home. And we feel that the house will not be in view of our next door neighbor or affect the field. I was tired of he, his brother, and friends driving their trucks behind my backyard, riding up the lawn to reach the knoll. So I asked him to put in an access way at the bottom of my property by the cemetery to use instead. I had went on the town's website to check my tax card for any red flags with topography, and the only area on the property that showed any wetlands was on the backside of my property. I was told after the fact that you can't go by the town's website, yet there were no disclaimers referring me to any other database. So being a layperson and not knowing any better, I thought everything was fine. So I gave Tony permission to put in a culvert, just so that there wouldn't be any hindrance from the natural flow of rainwater and snow melt from the three knolls. I thought we were being conscientious and protective of the land by doing this. We have been working with Mr. Boscheman, the wetland scientist, for the past year and a half, so he was able to answer some of your questions. It has now been over 2 years since we first started this process to subdivide my property so that my son would have a lot to build on. And never in my wildest dreams would I have thought it would have been this difficult. In this time frame, because of the delay, building costs have doubled, interest rates have gone sky high, and now costing my son an additional tens of thousands of dollars. My son is a newlywed, and all they want to do is to be able to build a home and start the family. Putting the driveway along the stone wall that abuts the Rowell property would maintain the natural visual effect of the property versus putting a driveway up through the middle of the field. And as we were advised, doing so would require several culverts and retaining walls. So that would take away from the natural look of the field. And then I did not know anything about I thought the utility poles would be there. I didn't know you had to do underground for those. So the last thing I want to see when I look out my front door would be all those culverts, retaining walls, and at that point I thought it was utility poles too. And same with my neighbors across the street and by others that drive by the property, because I feel the property is beautiful, and we do live on a scenic road, designated scenic road. So we're trying to do everything we can to preserve the natural beauty of the land as we have always done, and just ask respectfully that our request for subdivision be granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have another, just want to pass out just a letter from some of the butters, so you can all take a peek at it.
Thank you.
Can you make sure one gets to Kevin?
And Ms. Moe, if you have a copy of your letter, if you want that you read, that you want to give to Kevin as well, it'll be added to the minutes in the file. I'm sorry, sir, could you just identify yourself for us?
My name's Anthony Knopf.
Anthony Camo, okay, thank you. Mr. Camo handed out a letter dated July 12th, 2022 to the, addressed to the planning board, signed by 3 abutters, three addresses, 5 abutters. Cameron Stoddard and Brittany Stoddard, 169 Stephen Hill, Marianne Stoddard and Clive Evans at 163 Stevens Hill, and Carol Stoddard, an abutter also at 163 Stevens Hill. They're writing in support of the proposed subdivision plan submitted to the town of Nottingham. The subdivision is for, proposed subdivision allows a house to be built on one of the most picturesque locations in all of Stevens Hill Road. Having Stevens Hill Road designated as a scenic road brings many travelers through our little country road and allows them to imagine what it's like to live in such an area. The location of this house will continue to add to, value to the road and those scenic views. We want to continue by pointing out that the layout of this plan allows the field and forest to remain intact and views uninhibited. Specifically, the location of the proposed driveway is a spot that there is no visual impact as a neighbor, traveler, or explorer. We do understand that there is a small area of poorly drained wetlands crossed through for the driveway. However, as the Nottingham Conservation Commission pointed out from the February 14th, 2022 meeting minutes, the proposed driveway plans were satisfactory and that any other proposed driveway would be more impactful. This is an open field full of rolling hills and a natural flow of water. We as the butters would be very disappointed if the proposed plan was made to change in favor of a driveway that goes through the middle of a beautiful field with retaining walls, telephone poles, and culvert requirements. We are hopeful that the planning board shares our views and values of the scenic views Stevens Hill provides in the mission of conservation to preserve fields and forests throughout the town. Subdivision is simply for a son to move closer to his mother and help maintain this beautiful property. We are fortunate as a butters to be discussing one house lot on this property where it could easily be sold to a developer with 5+ house lots in mind. We're happy to provide or anything additional to show our continued support for Robin and Tony Camo and his wife Amanda Camo in their current proposed subdivision plan as submitted. Thank you for that letter. Is there any further discussion from the board tonight on the proposed plan? So they've already met. Have you already met with the Conservation Commission about this specific plan? Because being on a scenic road, that is one of the requirements of our regulations is that the plan go before the Conservation Commission to have a chance to review it and provide comment to us. Have you met with them since for this specific plan or just?
They've seen the plans, but not for scenic road purposes.
Not under this application.
So we need
So you'd want to schedule that. It sounds like there's gonna be some time, 'cause again, we're gonna need some legal input to help guide us, to guide you. Again, we do that to try to protect the town, protect the abutters, protect the applicant as well. Try to get it right ahead of time, so.
Excuse me, can I make one more comment?
Yep.
Again, Robin Camo. I heard somebody say something about, we said we were putting in a logging road. That was not the case. I think it was taken out of context because that same day I was required to come down to the town to do permits for logging, and I didn't know what they were talking about. And they said, well, you said you were putting in a logging road, and I said, no, we're not putting in a logging road. I said it was just an access way. And so I had to write a letter, and I submitted it to whoever it was, I forget who I even saw, it was a woman. So I do have a copy of that, but there should be a copy somewhere in the file saying that we did not intend on putting a logging road in, nor were we gonna be logging from the property at that time. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I did hear somebody say something about logging road.
That was from the.
That came from the building inspector, so that would probably be in something in their files related to it. Again, so there's different rules, for agriculture as well as for logging and forestry than there is for land development. So there's a lot of areas where it's less restrictive to do logging. And that's not my purview at all, or my forte. So does the board have any other questions or comments before we continue this?
There's one from the control.
Yeah, I'm not sure if all the.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I didn't close the public
Still
hearing. So was there any other abutter testimony? I apologize, thank you for bringing
Yes,
it.
Peter Rowell, 156 Stevensville Road, my wife Lauren Rowell. We prepared an extensive package here.
Yep.
I'm sure you can't read it tonight, but I'll give one to you. And it's not our intention to block homes from subdividing their property. That's not our intention at all. I think the house would look very nice out there, the property.
Thank you.
Our intention is that we follow the rules. Thank you. Kevin, I'll give you the one I have in my hand when I'm done.
Did you get one?
Okay, it would be have a house out there. You know, it's just that driveway's not supposed to go through that, it's not supposed to happen. I can go through this, I can put a timeline together of what happened out there.
Yeah, that, well, again, just because where we are tonight, in the extensive date information here, we did have your letter. We will go over this, definitely, but we want time to make sure that we can go
It's got my
through
plan of view, it just, again, this to me looks like a typical example of do it and ask forgiveness. That's not the way it's supposed to work, people should follow the rules.
And there's not gonna be a final action on this tonight, so what the plan is, we'll likely be continuing this case to another date and time certain.
Yeah.
The public hearing would remain open, I'd open it again.
Yeah.
To allow additional comment in, that'll allow us also time as a board and, staff to review any documentation we received, any additional comment we receive, and as well as hopefully get some feedback from town council on a few items, which will also help guide the applicant, which we'd have to give them back at that meeting.
And I think a sidewalk would be appropriate.
Yeah.
Can we have, one of those copies that you were handed out?
Oh, I got my last one, Kevin.
So,
It's gonna go to.
Statement from the board.
It'll be online shortly.
Or you can,
Or I can email it.
it, email it?
Yeah, I'll email it.
Thank you.
Yep.
I know there was interest in a site walk. Would anybody like to propose a date and time for that?
Hold on, I might have been.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I jumped ahead again.
So, I'm Lauren Chase Rowell, I'm Peter Rowell's wife, and we've lived on Stevens Hill for 38 years, and we love our property, and we love their property too. It's absolutely beautiful. We like our neighbors, and we feel like we have lots of things in common. We both love nature and biodiversity. We like living in the country. We love living on the scenic road. And we have other similarities that make them a compatible neighbor. We both kind of homestead and have some livestock and farm animals. And we both do, we're both very big family orientated. And we also both seem to enjoy having large gatherings of people on our land. So our issue is not at all that these kids would be able to build with their whole family. We love that idea. We're totally open to that. Our difficulty with this situation is the wetland violation. So DES has, there's an enforcement on this piece of land.
Yeah, that's. I
Okay,
don't wanna
that
cut you off,
says that it should be restored.
We know,
okay?
we understand that.
Yeah, but I
Probably do
mean,
need clarification.
you know, like, this is my land, so I hate being rushed because of the time.
Not rushing you, but we have to,
Okay.
we do have to be mindful of
Yeah,
repetitive
yeah,
pieces.
I
and we know the wetland
understand
part.
that, but like, right now I'm standing up for my land
Yeah,
that I
sure.
lived on, that I live on, and that I've protected for a very long time. So, our problem is with the wetland violation and that it should be restored. And there's a beautiful alternative that these guys have done a really nice job with that goes up and around. When you get an after-the-fact permit, it's based on that there is no other way to get to the site. There's no other way except for going into the wetland. And this is not the case. This could very easily be gone around, and I don't think the road is extended that much. And I think that a long, simple driveway through a field with tall grass, it is mowed right now, so a driveway would show the 17 acres isn't entirely mowed, but a lot of it is. So yes, a driveway would show, but if the field was, you know, a little bit restored, you wouldn't even be able to see the road. So what I struggle with this is that there's an enforcement action that is, everybody's just like going, like acting like it doesn't exist. And it does exist, they want it restored. DES, whether these guys say it's an insignificant wetland, the state DES disagrees. They feel strongly enough to make an action, and they've got hundreds of things to do besides this, they feel strongly enough to make an action that a restoration plan needs to happen. So, and there's a lot of things that just, so there's a lot of energy being put onto, like as if this has existed. In August, there was nothing here. This was grass. There's no old farm lane. There's no logging access. There's nothing except for a field. We used to mow this field before they moved for Mr. Faticelli. And we know this property and we know our boundaries quite intimately. So that road just never existed. And it got built, and we mentioned it, and they continued to go through the wetland, even though we said, you know, you shouldn't, this is a wetland and you need a wetlands permit. So, you know, that's our beef. Now, one thing I haven't heard anyone mention, it's all about, you know, 2 levels of wetland, but this wetland is the only headwaters from my 3,500 to 4,000 square foot wetland, which is 10 feet, which is right over the wall. So the violation, crossing the wetland, which blocks the natural flow of water, goes through a skinny culvert. 10 feet from that is our stone wall, and then there's a 4,000 foot wetland that is not getting the same kind of seepage. The hydrology has been changed through that area, so it does need to be removed. And they can go up and around and have a great house. And DES called me today, and there's a little bit of discrepancy about DES, like being okay with this. They are not okay with this. And that will show in the future. If you're gonna do the like my word against their word, DS is not happy with this. And so that's really, I have lots of other things to say, but it is late. We love the idea of kids living on the land and making a house. There's a beautiful access right around the upland that I don't think will need culverts or retaining walls. It's just a field. There's a few slopes. It gets them out of the 8% thing. I just think it's a really good solution. So I am going to be doggedly protecting my wetland, my 4,000 feet on my side of the land, and I am going to protect and hope that this area will be restored to what it was. And then I think everybody can be happy.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your comment there. Again, there's multiple sides, but that's why we're gonna go wait for DES's decision as well as get our town council's opinion on it. So we definitely don't take either side lightly.
It's also important to note too that we can't get into the weeds in some of this because we don't actually have an additional use permit
Right.
to force us to get into the details.
Correct.
But the road was never there. So the whole conditional use permit and everything is just
No, I understand.
after.
We can only review what's in
The
front of us,
violation.
so it's been stated that there's some questions that the board has, so
Sure.
at this point, we can't get into those details.
Before I close up public hearings, and again, I'll close it tonight, but we would open it again at the continuance. Is there any other discussion regarding this case? I do want to let everybody know too, this case or any case, I encourage people to submit written comment to the board, or boards as they may be, for any case, to make sure that it gets part of the record. Meetings go long, things come up, you're only in person, there's no Zoom meetings anymore, so they can be difficult for people to attend. So I appreciate and encourage people to be here as well, but if you make sure that your voice gets heard, please consider also writing it in as well, and you can definitely still show up too and speak towards that. Is there any public comment additional at this point? Seeing none, I'm gonna close the public hearing for tonight. There's been a discussion about a site walk. Would anybody like to propose a date and time on that? I think it would be
Are
helpful.
there any, I guess, are there any weeks that don't, are there any weeks that anybody in the next, like, couple weeks is, or everybody's here? I won't be able to attend the day that we already have one sidewalk attended.
The, July 21st through August 1st is gonna be difficult for my husband and I to be in town.
July 20th?
July 21st
Thursday through a Monday.
through the following week.
July 20th is next Wednesday.
July 20th is next Wednesday.
21st, you said, right?
The 21st is a Thursday.
Correct.
So July 20th is next Wednesday. Would that work for enough people on the board to attend?
Which date did you mention?
July 20th, next Wednesday,
20th?
Let's say
I will not be able to.
5:30 or 6.
I could do that.
I can do it.
5 o'clock, 5:30?
It would have to be
do it.
5:30 or 6.
And I'm fine with, stopping by and just.
Go by ahead of time.
Yeah,
If you can, if they're not already done so, it sounds like it's easy to see where this is. I would suggest if there's potential that the driveway may have to be moved to a different location to potentially stake off another spot so that it's easy to identify. But if the spot is easy to see from the road, that's one big thing, is so people can drive by and at least see where the proposed driveway is at this point.
If you do that, could you also throw a stake? Is that that's a proposed bound, correct, up front? Granite bound?
Yes, I mean, I can flag the
I don't
property
need to-
line and the driveway would go along it, I
The
guess.
property, that bound, you can write approximate, just so we can see
Yep.
what that is. And I'll plan to go by either just before or just after that.
So would anybody like to make a motion for a site walk July 20th at, say, 5:30 PM?
5:30? Sure.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Motion by, who's that? Ian, Mr. McKinnon, second by Ms. Mooney. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 6-0. And the next part would be, and site walks are open to the public and are encouraged for public to attend, anybody that's concerned or would like to be there for that. Next item would be a motion to continue. And Kevin, what's our schedule looking like for dates to continue to?
Excuse me?
What's our schedule looking like for the continuance dates?
The next hearing?
Yeah,
Doing pretty good. We approved it looks like we just have one continuation right now for, the 27th.
okay.
Shake on.
27th is a work day too,
No,
right?
no, that's in August.
That's in August, oh, all right.
Will we have legal review by then?
I know.
We won't have a plan,
Yeah,
We wouldn't have a revised plan. We wouldn't have anything to review.
Yeah, that's,
So I guess it's up to the applicant.
so August 10th would probably be a better date. That gives us time to get legal review and revised plans.
Just one question, should I fill out a conditional use permit for our next meeting?
You can have one ready for us to consider, and hopefully by that point, we'll have council review and they'll tell us whether or not that's a,
Ultimately, that's up to you. If you wanna push forward.
Whether
with
that's
both
a,
there, then yes, it would require a conditional use permit.
so I would
I'll
say
make a motion.
for August 10th, because that's not our workshop, right?
August
No,
10th?
24th is our workshop. So
Okay.
I'll make a motion to continue case number 22-009-SUV to our August 10th meeting at 7 PM.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McKinnon, second by Mr. Anderson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Motion
Aye.
carries 6-0. For any abutters, so no additional legal notice goes out for these? You don't get anything else in the mail? This acts as the date and time certain continuance, so you'll look for the agenda, but that'll be the next time this board decides the site walk acts on this application. Moving along, so I promised 10, but I'm gonna do a hard stop at 10:30. There's a lot of people here that have stayed, and I appreciate that, and I wanna honor their time. The next item is case number 22-010-DR. It's an application from Joseph Falzone on behalf of George Williams, Day, and Kelly, requesting a design review of an 8-lot subdivision. Property is located on Stevens Hill Road in Nottingham, identified as tax map 49, lot 7. Stevens Hill Road is designated as a scenic road. Is anybody here for this case?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott Cole from Mules Associates. I really appreciate everybody staying for us this evening. Again, my name is Scott Cole from Mules Associates, Senior Project Designer, representing Joseph Falzone, developer who is wishing to develop a piece of land on Stevens Road. I provided it for this evening. This is map 46, lot 7. The intention is to do a conventional frontage lot subdivision consisting of 8 acres, of 8 lots. On the plan here, on the bottom of the plan is Stevens Hill Road, which is a scenic roadway. To the back of the parcel is actually Bean River. The color coordinated plan, the olive green symbolizes wetlands. The total acreage of the lot is 45 acres. We have the wetland component. Cut that off if we could. Roughly 45 acres. The total wetland area is 14.2 acres, or roughly 31%. We do have Jamie Long, who is the wetland and soil scientist here this evening. He did an evaluation on site. That's how we got the wetland boundaries. The lot size is proposed would stand between 3.7 acres to 12.2 acres. We have provided in concept the buildable areas. These are roughly oversized lots, all meeting the 30,000 square foot buildable area within setback area. Being a stone wall, a scenic road, we do realize we will meet with the Concom to review mature trees and walls. We have looked at the plan in conceptual form for driveway location. Currently, we are providing one common driveway, I believe, to lots 4 and 5. There are 2 vernal pools in the property. We're trying to stay away from in the beginning. You can see the circular area. And then we have separate driveways leading to 6, 7, and 8. Originally, we tried to do a common driveway between lots 1 and 2, but to meet the frontage requirement, where the lot line fell is actually right on an existing town drainage culvert that crosses the road. So although that would be a good location for a common driveway, that actually won't be possible. So our intent would be to stay off-site or off of the property line, the required dimension, and then have the 2 driveways next to each other. There would be 2 potential wetland impacts. One is actually a small crossing. You can see between the wetlands at the front where it nets down, there is a small drainage area. That is actually a wetland between there. It's so small you can barely see it on the plan. That would be a potential crossing there. And then further up for lot 7, we are still evaluating that for vegetated, good sized trees and everything that's required by the roadway. There's potentially one for lot 7, and we will look at other options. So basically, we're here this evening to get the board's input. Joe has had a meeting with some of the abutters. I believe the conservation chairman, correct, Joe? Was that? Yes. Or representative. They went over some of the aspects and what possible protections we could do. What I have done is I provided on the plan, you can see the darker greens. We have drawn a line across the rear of the property. That would be proposed conservation restriction or easement, which would save that natural perpetuity of the land back there, which would consist of 21.7 acres. In addition to that, the green portion in the front of the parcel, Joe would be amenable to basically issuing a 100-foot buffer setback from the scenic road. That would keep all of the proposed houses 100 feet back, keeping the nice urban feel of Stevens Hill Road. The only impact that abutters would see would be the only driveway cuts for access, that's it. We have done test pits on the job, I think that was yesterday. Test pits have been accomplished, we have good results on the test pits, so I'm sure the abutters probably saw our machine out there. Other than that, we're just trying to get a feel for the board and try to move on with a full application. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. And for the audience, the design review is intended, it is formal, it is more binding, but it's not a full application. So it's intended to guide the applicant before they continue engineering and all that. So it's a chance for them to have formal board input on a proposal before going to that next step. Mr. Haney, did you wanna go over your comments?
Being a design review, I issued a, stripped down staff memo, seeing as how, not all the information is available, but I did give a project summary, I did share it with the applicant, or his representative. And I posed, questions as opposed to making, definitive statements, but basically, asking them, install the driveways, septic systems, and stabilized soils along the steep slopes, per that article of our subdivision regulations. What are they gonna do to minimize impacts? The property does slope down from where the house is proposed towards the resource area. And that would include during construction, as well, when, the site is bare. What consideration was given towards an open space development, to, again, minimize impacts to not only the sites, but the levels in the back. And then, what steps will be taken to minimize impacts on the existing stone walls along the road, particularly for each of the curb cuts. Common driveway, was good to see. Shame that other one not be allowed. We did have a little bit of a jog in one of our recent ones, maybe that might be something to consider. One of our, I can't remember the project, but one of the ones that just came through us, it wasn't right on the property line, it kind of came off something on the sides. That might be something that, I don't know if that'll fit there, but point being, what can we do to minimize, the impact along the scenic road to both the trees and the stone walls? I think a lot of this stuff is obvious and can be discussed. That's where I'm at right now.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously it's I appreciate that, the thought about the buffer to keep the visual impact of this stretch of road to a minimum. It's a pretty narrow road. I don't know what the width is of Stevens Hill Road through this area, but I feel like it's dirt. It's pretty narrow in that area and pretty far from the fire department. So, that part would have to come into play, the cistern and sprinklers, if that's gonna be proposed. There's a lot of steep slopes, it appears, on here, including within the parcels, so towards the back, before you get to the critical wetland buffer. And I do see, I think, one vernal pool flagged on here, or maybe there's a few.
Two.
Vernal pools.
More out back, yeah.
So I think you've accounted for, it's hard to tell, obviously, on this plan, if the contiguous area that's shown for each lot, it looks like it doesn't account for any of the unbuildable areas or areas of impingement that would be too narrow. I think we call out 50 or 75 feet. If it's narrower than that, then it's considered non-contiguous.
Yeah, I've done this before. There's actually lines that delineate.
That's what I thought.
So there's no hourglass figures that are counted.
Yeah, I can see like one of them right there.
Yeah, any proposed wetland crossing, so before it was a variance, now we do have a conditional use permit process. If it doesn't qualify for the conditional use, then we put you back to the variance. That's what to go before this board before it goes through that. So obviously, again, you're getting pretty far outside of town, and it's an area of the town that's very, still rural, more so than the rest of our town. So there's potential for it to be considered, scattered, or for additional road upgrades to be looked at, but that would be something that probably come along further and have input from the road agent and fire and police, to help guide us there. Does anybody from the board have any specific questions or comments? I do want to open the public hearing part of this, because there are a lot of abutters here, just to make sure that everybody has a chance to speak, because that oftentimes helps guide the applicant as well, to hear some of that. Sounds like they've met with some abutters already.
I have a couple quick ones that I was gonna propose. I think you said 10:30. I think
Yep.
if nobody else, maybe we can extend it 10:45, try and give them a half hour.
Sure.
And I think we can stress to any abutters or public that I know I've seen some submitted documents, but that, verbiage of the.
Okay with
the
that?
writing note, so,
I won't hold any board members here if anybody has to leave or feels the need to leave, please, do not feel like you have to stay.
I'll just stay.
Yep.
I was just curious, I see the stippling, is that a soil line or is that a steep slopes designation? There's like some little dots, kind of on the steeper sections, I didn't know if that's.
Yes, I'm sorry,
is
good
that
question. That
delineated?
is the delineated 25% slopes.
It is, okay.
I looked at it today, we can really, we don't contemplate disturbing any of them. There's plenty of room to develop
Okay.
without going into those areas.
Is that on the back that you're referring to, or?
There's kind of pockets of it, that's this like.
Dark gray areas on your plan.
Little
Okay.
tiny dots,
Yeah.
that's the steep slope, that's what it looks like, okay. I think, sorry, I missed some of it, but, looks like you are contemplating some shared driveways, but not, some of them are shown with individuals at this point.
Conceptually,
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. I also, to Blair's point, had looked at this and was curious what your thinking was behind not approaching an open space subdivision. And then I also noted that, because of this area, the road is narrow in some areas, and it would probably require some extensive discussions with the road agent. And then lastly, I think you're showing a 75-foot, is that your vernal pool no cut buffer? Is that
That's
what it's
correct.
showing? So I think we actually only have a 25-foot, unless you're proposing 75 foot.
Well, we are, because the way I wrote it into definitions, that would be more considered and it would be considered a hydro, A, being a vernal pool.
Oh, I see, so you're treating that as your septic? Well, yeah, for buildings, correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. No, I saw no cut, and then I see you proposing a driveway, I thought, sometimes we treat the no cut as like you can't put the driveway within the no cut, I got you, okay. For the purpose of the driveway, it's 25 feet. If it's a no cut, no disturb.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Okay.
try to stay out of it as much as possible.
I
It's
got you.
kind of, that one driveway kind of becomes, do we stay away from the vernal pool, or do we try to minimize the wetland impact, so.
Okay, and then, yeah, I'm just curious, the thinking behind, there's this pretty large tract of land. Was there thought behind an open space subdivision, just to consolidate 30,000 square foot lots, or?
We're not doing a subdivision roadway, so we're not proposing a subdivision roadway to get to our yield plan. So. we-
Correct, I understand
Right.
you're not proposing a roadway,
Right.
but this would act as a yield, so was it just the financial cost of building a road to put 7 small lots kind of further back from the road? That's my point, is there's 8 lots shown here. It looks like there's space you could build a small roadway with 8 lots off of it, condensed, so the development's not spread out, land conserved. I just didn't know if you had even considered the open.
Doesn't
space.
work mathematically. And if I did do a yield plan, you'd see 16 lots. You'd have 2 entrances of the roadway, and you'd see all the houses, so.
Okay.
We can go that route. We went-
I was just curious if you thought about it.
Looks very similar to Guile Road,
Yes,
this
basically,
plan, yeah.
I think I looked at it originally with, you could do even a one entrance, but you could do a cul-de-sac, and it really, the amount of disturbance goes up very quickly.
Right.
I think this is more in the urban feel of what's in this area of town with no room.
And 5 of the lots, you may not realize, are much more setback than 100 feet, just because of the setbacks of those wetlands. Those are gonna be close to 150 to 200 feet.
I was gonna ask that
Yeah.
question, is how, for instance, lot 4, that buildable area is farther back.
Much further. And we were asked by the abutters, would we do a 100-foot buffer?
So you
We
would
agree.
basically deed a 100-foot buffer on the front of the lots?
Yeah, it would just be a no-cut buffer.
And then, to that point of the cutting, so on that plan, is that lighter green, is that you envisioning that will be cleared, or is that, you're saying that's the?
No,
outside
that's
of your
just the
outside of your
usable area.
buffers? Okay.
Yeah, and of course, some of that's not even really usable, because you get your 25% slopes. That's just basically what the usable area of the owners will have. Everything else is protected.
Yeah, so the dark green area between that and the other green, that's the, is that the 100-foot critical wetland setback? Or is that just
On the front?
no, on the back?
On the back, so that would be all conservation easement.
Okay.
Dark and light would be.
Yeah, the dark are gonna be all the way to the river.
Okay.
Whole wetland, all that would be protected.
Okay. Yeah, because obviously this abuts, I think it's Mulligan Forest, so it's over 2,000 acres of conservation land, so, and then you have the Bean River, which has the stream protection part of it, which it looks like you'd be outside of that anyhow, for the, and then obviously the critical wetland buffer, and then all the steep slopes are in the wetlands in the front. Is there any other board I do wanna
I have a quick question.
get to the,
You had mentioned conservation easement. Does that mean that you will take the back property and move it to a single or two properties up front? Because conservation easements are generally 20 acres or more. Or are you gonna move to deed restrictions, in which everybody has a deed restriction for the back of the property? And who's gonna monitor that? It just,
I've done it, as you know, in town different ways here.
well, we can chat at the
Yeah,
conservation.
yeah,
Commission
and
meeting,
just come up
but
with a way that you're
that's-
comfortable with.
This is a very high valued area.
And we're aware of
For
that.
habitat, for the Bean River, it's the most pristine river in this part of the state.
It's beautiful back
It's
there,
beautiful.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
of course, anybody else from the board before I open the public hearing part? All right, I'm gonna open,
Do we wanna do public and just let everybody speak, do a timeline?
yeah, so I'm gonna open public hearing, because I do wanna honor that everybody's here and give everybody a chance to speak. Again, I think it's helpful for the board, the applicant, to hear and answer questions at this stage. So if you'd like to speak towards, for, against, or just general questions about this application, please come up now. Just identify yourself, and again, please direct comments to the board. For the time for everybody, if someone else has already said kind of what your thoughts are, you can come up and identify yourself, say, I echo those sentiments.
Just to be read in the record.
Yeah,
Yep.
so.
I know that it's late. My name is Mark West. I live on Stevens Hill Road. Joe did meet with us. The final page is a sort of write-up when we met on the 23rd of June. It's not something you need to read or, right now for the meeting. It's more just knowing what we discussed. So the first map just shows that area of green in the back that we talked about protecting. I used to be on the Conservation Commission. I did the critical wetland study, and that wetland is the second largest wetland in town. And the largest is near where the dump is and where the North River comes under 152. So that was, we talked about some things, and in purple is the wetlands that show on some of the lots that show that you have to go back. The next page is just to zoom in so you can see some of these lots a little clearer. And I have estimated where the two vernal pools are in blue, approximately. And I think they are a bit of a challenge for this because the pools are on the road and between the road and the house, and you're gonna have to get a driveway. And as you talked about earlier, you need a conditional use permit and all that stuff. And then the blue line in the back is the potential conservation land. So we have and these different, they had existing driveways. I put a couple of orange potential shared driveway. The goal is whether it's shared or a single driveway, what's the best place to put it to have the least impact on the roadway. So that's just some background in what I have, and I guess the only other question is, when you do a subdivision, if you create the need for a crossing, how does that affect the conditional use permit?
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to, from the public that would like to come and add comment?
Peter Ron, 156 Stevens Road. I just want to say we did meet with Mr. Falzone, and we did put some suggestions in front of him, and he has complied or, working away with him to do that, which is great. One thing I want to mention is that he's going to have to extend the power line from here. There is no power line left, it ends right here. And I think if I remember correctly, the co-op's district stops right there. And the rest of Stevens Hill Road is on public service. So that may end up being an issue. And the other thing, I was wondering, how are you gonna handle, extension of this line here? Is it gonna be underground, like is it required for like a new subdivision,
On private land it is.
on private land?
Poles can be extended within the roadway.
Okay.
Is there-
So I'm Lauren Chase Rowell again, and I'm just really grateful that Mr. Falzoni has like let us like give input and that he's like really open to that, and I think that we as a group have come up with some really good things for this piece of land underneath the I'm sorry, underneath the assumption that we can't stop development, which we would love to do, but we've checked out many of those options and we can't. So I think that this is pretty good. My two pieces of input would be that we would actually walk the road and leave the big trees and set the driveways according to the conditions of the stone wall and where the big trees actually are. Because sometimes when you do this isolated on a desk, which I did for 30 years, you can just, end up taking the biggest, most beautiful trees. So I think you are open to that.
Yeah, we're gonna have to set survey, go out, pin the driveways, then go out and see what are the trees that are there. We have the forester here tonight, also changing law. He's gonna go out and measure the trees according to the scenic road regulation.
And then my second thing is just my input would be because there is no way you can sneak through here and not affect or impact these wetlands, but this lot is much harder. And I just want to put out the idea that it would be really nice if this could be one lot and not hurt those wetlands or impact them. And that goes back to Mr. Falzoni, if he can afford to do that, or what would it entail, or could we find a buyer that would meet his conditions of what price that would be. But I think that would be a really valuable move for scenic road and for Nottingham's valuable and irreplaceable natural resources.
Thank you. As part of the process, when there is a scenic road, again, it goes to the Conservation Commission for review as well. Any proposed tree removal, stone wall removal, they have a chance to have input, and they provide usually a letter to this board to help guide us on that too, so, that would be part of the process. Any other, public comment? That would like to speak?
Hi, I'm Denise Shanahan, and I live at 98 Stevens Hill Road. I've been to the Concom meeting, I've sent several emails regarding this, and the meeting with Mr. Falzone was actually at my house. My main concern being, well, one of the millions of concerns I have, but also that I live on one of the narrowest parts of that road, right there. My mailbox gets hit all the time because that road is not wide enough for wide vehicles. So you've got all of this new traffic coming down there from people that think that it's okay to drive 40 or 50 miles an hour on a dirt road, and they do, but now you're gonna have more traffic. What are they gonna do with that road? Are they gonna take it and widen it? Are they gonna take my front property? Or are they gonna take down the stone walls and ruin the vernal pools?
Where are you located?
I live at 98, which is,
So at
I
the,
think it's 4-10 on your plan there, Cheryl.
okay. Yeah, can you see it?
Across from the line between 6 and 7.
Right, and that's where the road is really, really narrow. So I mean, when you're coming to do the site review, I'd be really thrilled to have you really look at how narrow the road is right there. So the impact of all of that, the traffic that's gonna come from here is gonna have to double up at some point. Not so much the traffic that's coming there and going back towards, 152, but everyone coming from here is gonna really impact that one section quite a bit. And that road can be a little bumpy. I never complain because I wanna slow people down. That's nature's speed bumps. So that's one of my many concerns. Thank you.
And part of a larger plan would be, all the town department review, so we usually get a response from the town road agent. The building inspector, gets a chance to provide input, the fire chief and the police chief generally all provide input to us on any kind of subdivision or site plan. So current road conditions would be, especially on a dirt road, would be one that's looked at. Is there any other, yep, come on out, please. If you can, yeah.
I want to go up. Vicky Connors, I'm at 100 Stevens Hill Road. And where the culvert is right at the end of my driveway.
Okay.
It's a town culvert where the wetlands come and drain, they go under Stevens Hill, and they go down the side of my property. So my concern with this narrow road, there are times in the winter, and you can ask your town crew, I go out and I shovel in front of my driveway to keep the ice. When I pull out, if I'm not careful, I can end up right across in that ditch. It's very narrow. My big concern, yes, the trees, the animals, the wetlands, everything. But I'm also concerned about this town culvert and what's gonna happen there. The impact of the houses. So if that could be looked at as well, we would all appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as part of a larger plan, there's usually, stormwater or drainage analysis that can be required, erosion plans. And there's options for off-site exactions and things like that if areas are found that need to be improved, from the development. So that would be all something that would be looked at, additionally. And I'm sorry, in the back, you can come on up.
I'm, Cory Caputo, I live in Cedar Road, and I don't understand how you can put driveways right through the wetlands to 5 of these lots. I don't get that, and then there's the vernal pools that we know about, that Mark pointed out. And there's critical areas that we are concerned about. The road is like a sanctuary. Everybody goes down there to relax. Everything, people just come from out of town, they've lived here before, they come back. And then there's the blanding turtles that we're all concerned about, endangered species that are all through there. I've heard of there's nesting sites. That certain people know where they are. I don't, but I can see them in my own driveway. So, it's just, the nature of the road would be so changed. And you'd have so much more traffic coming up and down, and they do go too fast. And we need somebody to slow them down, do the 25. I have my phone here with the critical areas and number of harmonious use. And somebody else I know who can clear this up for me, do a better job speaking, but I just don't see how they can justify this going right through the wetlands, even with setbacks. I just think it's crazy. They might get away with 3 lots, but not 8. You can keep my map if you want.
No, it's okay, we have copies.
the same
We have the same one, yeah.
So, wanna say anything, Pete? This is my friend Pete, who spends a lot of time on Stevens Hill Road.
And if you can, just, we try to capture, everything's recorded, so we try to help with the minutes.
My name's Peter Leavenworth, and I am potentially investing in living on Stevens Hill Road. So, I just don't, like Corey said, I don't understand how it's possible to have driveway cuts. I mean, we just went through the process with a relatively minor example of that, just around the corner, basically. And this is proposing 5 cuts, and I know that there's a possibility of conditional use. That would have to be passed by the DES as well, I believe, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. There are alternatives, and you could, like you said, change the number of lots and the configuration so that you could use as much of the good land as you can
and constrict the access. But it would also lower the number of houses that you could put in there. And I think that it's important to have the best interest of the town here, as opposed to the possibility of making money.
The more houses we have, the higher our property taxes go.
And I'm not sure if a variance is the same as a waiver.
No, a waiver is something, so within our subdivision, anything in zoning, we don't have the capability to waive. If it's in zoning, variance is required, or there may be a less cumbersome process, but still go through zoning.
Additional use.
In the subdivision regulations and site plan regulations, those are more controlled by this board directly.
Right.
There are sections that we have either waivers built in that can be requested from, or in a couple of instances, conditional use permits can be applied for. And there's if it's a conditional use permit, it outlines like,
Additional
how we weigh
criteria.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, part of the criteria in 11, let's see, this is the subdivision regulations, 11.1, Part 2, the waiver will not in any manner vary the provisions of the Nottingham zoning ordinance or official maps. And just below that, in number 4, protection of environmental and natural resources is accomplished through the granting of the waiver. It's not an abrogation of those protections.
And I think I misspoke. So even in zoning, I think we do have, the conditional use permit is built into the zoning portion of this. So that went through a town vote.
Additional use permit grants the planning board to act on a zoning matter.
Correct. In a very narrow way. And then if it doesn't meet those criteria, the board votes that the conditional use permit doesn't apply, then the relief is a variance.
Yep. And I'm a retired builder, and I've done subdivisions, and in the town of Newmarket, I had a 5-lot subdivision set up, and the state came down, and one of the driveways did not meet the criteria, and so I had 4 lots instead of 5, and that's just the way it was.
And that's possible that could end up on something like this. So again, a design review, it's more formal, but it's a back and forth to try to help gauge the guide the applicant onto what their final plan that they submit is. We do have the capability of the board to reduce lots, based on a number of conditions. One of those, something I would look at in particular is the type of wetland, the size of it, where it's feeding into, the vernal pools, things of that nature, as to, again, all wetlands are important, for water storage and
Besides,
a whole slew of other issues.
Yeah.
But there's some that have a higher value than others do.
well, I hasten to
So they're
point out that, what is it, Queechy Pond? Queasy Pond.
Quincy.
Quincy Pond, excuse me.
We're all tired.
Yes, we're very tired. Quincy Pond is kitty corner across from this.
Yeah.
And they're surrounded by swamps and wetlands that this all feeds into. So this property has a massive wetlands in back of it, and then across the street from it. So,
I've been concerned about the impact of it.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's a fine line for a land use board between landowners' rights, and also, the community and the municipality and what we've set up. So there's a balance to be had. Oftentimes, things come before us, in the end, something different occurs, but we have to be mindful that landowners do have the option to at least come before and propose plans, and then it's up to the board to act on those and work with the applicant on every case.
Well, the board can suggest different plans.
Correct.
Just like you did.
Yep.
And it's important to note that conditional use permit isn't just giving a summary of what you want. The reason for it is because you essentially have to provide the board with more justifications, essentially. There's certain topics to address. So there will be a point where if there's crossings proposed, it's more than we would just like to cross, so.
Yeah.
That's the way it is with every wetland
Yep.
crossing that requires the conditional use.
So I assume economics alone are not enough.
I believe that's actually one of the criteria to address in there is.
It is, actually.
Yeah, so it's actually, it can't be the only
Factor.
factor.
Right.
Correct, there are some certain things that cover.
Yep.
State RSA's as well, conditional use.
And the state can still interpose on that.
Yeah,
on
we
those
do not
decisions.
subvert their process, so anytime a wetland impact is proposed, an applicant would have to go get a permit from the state for a dredge and fill. So that's a separate process, so
And
again,
it requires state subdivision as well, so
Correct.
there's that too.
there's a number of other approvals, state subdivision, if this is over 100,000 square feet of disturbance, alteration of terrain, there's other times where an alteration of terrain can kick in at a lower threshold. And then obviously, and then the state subdivision approval, so there's a number of other approvals that go hand in hand with every application.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other, public comment?
Square. This is Doyle, 182 Stevens Hill Road. Basically just ditto what everybody says, so we can say that. And also I just hope someone's thinking about how many more cars there will be on the road now, including the extra house we live next door to Robin, come up. And I cannot even believe how many cars are on the road these days. Is there some kind of, someone look at that, is that evaluated? I don't know, a road like ours, yes, good. Cause it's very worrisome, in every single way, party walk on the road. As exactly what else the now is. Completely changed in the 30-something years since that. Just wanted to add that. And go home.
Appreciate that, thank you. I'm gonna, Mr. Falzone.
You brought up the 10,000 square foot threshold, just to give you an idea of the magnitude of these two wetland crossings, they're under 3,000 square feet. They're the least line threshold that we have to meet.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I think I mentioned the alteration of terrain and that there's some criteria that kicks that down lower than 100,000, but I wasn't certain what that is, but,
It was designated short.
is there any other public comment? I'd like to, wrap this up part and give.
I just have one, I
Yep.
know I've gone and I shouldn't go again, but I think that what I've witnessed in the last month of my life with the thing next to me on Stevens Hill Road and this situation is that people have a really hard time or a misunderstanding of looking at the whole system. So sometimes if we look at the 8 lots, it's not really an accurate assessment because the whole area is wetland drainage and it's all beautiful, critical habitat. So behind this is a big right-of-way and it has been scalped to an inch of its life. And Eversource, right-of-way, behind this land. And then we have added development, we have added cars, and all these little pieces just add up to degradation. And we don't see it because we don't see species lessen or disappear over 10 years. But that's what's happening, because I have lived there for 38 years, and I actually have a lot of data, my own personal data supporting that. So I just want to say, like, where is it in this planning type thing, or assure me, please, that you are looking at Mulligan Forest, which we promised were, that was Nottingham's future water source maybe, which could be affected negatively as we just keep impacting, little bits at a time. And so it seems like it doesn't happen, but it does happen. So that's all. Thank you.
I'm gonna, close the public hearing. Mr. Falzone, and do you have anything else you wanted? And so design review, obviously, there's a chance for it to be continued or to have a second design review within the 90 days. So I don't know if we give you enough feedback tonight, if you heard enough feedback, or if you'd like to get on the agenda again for, potentially for another meeting.
I think we're good.
Okay, as I said, we can always put you on the agenda if you want to be on one, and then if you decide, no, we're good, then just
I'll
email.
continue to work with you about it.
Okay. yeah, let's have a motion to close the design review on this. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and for your respect and for
I'll make a motion to close the design review for case number 22-010 DR.
motion by Mr. McKinnon, second by Ms. Mooney to close it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, carries. Very late, so
I'll make a motion to adjourn and skip everything else.
Second.
to the board, I really appreciate your time on this and respect for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
That's nice.
How long did it take you, Sue?
Okay.